into the truth, and so I'm glad that he's found another outlet now.
I was devastated, and I was really
Chuck Mangione in the background, right?
I know, upset and worried for him, of course. And I'm so happy to hear that he is excited about the new direction that his show is taking.
Yeah, it was sad to hear that we might lose another conservative voice, and I'm just so glad he's back.
I guess I wasn't surprised because
totally Chuck
a lot of stuff is going on in the radio media business now, and unless someone's got just ratings that are just through the roof, and they really know him well, everybody seems like you're kind of on thin ice.
What's your favorite thing about Jon's show?
I just love Jon's honest pursuit of the truth and his good Christian values.
I appreciate his candidness.
Accessibility now, which is really great. I just love all the people that he has on there, and his perspective, often I'm thinking, I never thought that, or that's a good intro, or I never saw that coming.
What I like about Jon's show is he has a passion for the truth, and he has a passion for a diversity of topics with a good focus on economic considerations, and it's very educational.
His topics, hearing current events of Minnesota. I can pick up national news anywhere. So going to the old station, what it's changed to is just national, and I don't get the Minnesota perspective.
He stands up for his beliefs. He doesn't back down.
He's not afraid to say it like it is.
Easy to identify with. Every day's man.
It's just that he's smart. I don't get to have that many, I'm running for U.S. Senate, I don't get to have a lot of smart dialogue. It's usually just sound bites. The times where I was on the Jon Justice Show, they were more just thought-provoking, real conversations that were a little bit more long-form, and I like that. I like to be able to talk with somebody who's educated on the issues, smart, and is an honest broker. So you can have some real dialogue in the town square, and I think that's kind of what Jon Justice brings, is real dialogue to the town square, and I'm glad he's found another place to do that.
All the jokes, and of course, Freedom Fridays.
Freedom Friday for sure. That's so fun.
Actually, most people probably wouldn't say this, but I like it when he really takes apart the Star Tribune writers and editorials. He'll get into their articles and just rip them to shreds, just for all the faults and all the one-sided journalism that they do. All the things that they miss when they put together their articles. So that's my favorite thing that he does.
Well, good news for that guy today on the show, because we actually do have a story where that very thing will happen. Those were listeners at the America 250 Center of the American Experiment event from this past Saturday. So incredibly blessed and grateful to hear those kind words. And speaking of the local news, as we launch Wednesday's show, big news broke overnight. I know this because when I woke up this morning, my text, I had like 37 texts waiting for me. And it was all from one text chain. And it was pretty much all about this story. Here is just a snippet from Channel 5.
Hi, everybody. Kevin Dorn in the KSTP newsroom. And we are tracking a bombshell story out of the city of St. Paul right now. The police chief, Axel Henry, is accusing the mayor, Khalil Hur, of sexual harassment. This is completely out of the blue. We're working to get reaction from all sides on this. The mayor's office, the police chief. We've got a letter outlining all the complaints and allegations. But we're going to have this for you later tonight, so I hope you can join us. Again, sexual harassment allegations against the mayor of St. Paul by the police chief. Hope you join us.
It is the Jon Justice Show presented by American Experiment, AmericanExperiment.org. We are streaming live on the MixLR app, also at AmericanExperiment.org. You can watch on the X feed at MN Think Tank. If you're on X, we're also up on YouTube at the American Experiment YouTube page, my personal YouTube page, and both of our Facebook pages as well. As we dive into today's show, Lieutenant Governor candidate with Lisa Damuth, Ryan Wilson, will be joining us right around 8 o'clock this morning. We've got a lot of news to cover today. I was telling Isaac, producer Isaac, who's joining me here this morning. Good morning, Isaac.
Good morning, John.
How are we doing this morning, sir?
Oh, pretty good.
You getting used to the early hours yet?
I don't know about used to.
Yeah.
Late night, early morning.
It depends on how long you do it for, but eventually you get used to it.
All right, that's good.
I couldn't go back the other way. I mentioned that when I was working more of like a 9 to 5, when we were setting everything up for the debut of the show, that was really throwing me off. Like driving in the morning in broad daylight is very, very odd to me.
I will say it's nice being done at like 2.
There is that. Yeah. Or earlier.
Or earlier.
Yeah.
I like that.
Although the prep never stops, which certainly was the case this morning. I woke up, and as I mentioned, I do. So I have a whole routine, and this totally works. I just want to point this out. So I had seen, my algorithm had fed me basically details on better ways to wake up in the morning to allow your body to adjust to the early morning hours. And there was this whole set of routines. And the idea is that you don't want to drink your cup of coffee as soon as you wake up. As you sleep overnight, your cortisol levels rise as you're asleep. And it takes the body a while to go and get rid of that when you wake up in the morning. So what you want to do is you want to wake up and you want to allow your body to naturally get rid of all those chemicals that go and stress you out. Because if you have your coffee too early, it suppresses that ability. And then what happens is when the coffee wears off later on, then you crash even harder. So my whole routine in the morning has completely changed. And you're not supposed to get on screens either. That's another big facet of this. So I basically reversed the order that I did everything. I used to get up, get my cup of coffee, and then I would immediately go to my phone, and then I would immediately go to the computer. I would do all my work. I would do all my prep. I would pull my audio. I would fix the audio. I would send it off to the producer of the show. Then I would go get in the shower, and then I would drive in. Now I go in the complete opposite order. I immediately get up, take a shower, wait about 40 minutes before I start my cup of coffee, and then wait about a half hour before I go and get online. And let me just say up front, it has made a world of difference for me. I'm not even joking. As an individual that gets up with the alarm at 2:30 in the morning, this was the first time, by the way, that I finally actually woke up with the alarm. Because I've been waking up earlier and just deciding, okay, I'm going to get up. I got to get here early. I want to make sure everything is off and running the way that it needs to be. But typically, when I do get up, I look at my phone just briefly, which is why I bring all this up. I look at my phone for just really quick. Make sure, because I've got it on Do Not Disturb. And so in case something happened overnight or Melinda needed me to know something as soon as I woke up, I need to check it. So I looked at it this morning, and like I said, I had like 37 messages. I'm like, oh, what is going on? Because typically that means something happened overnight. And people are talking about it, and I'm involved in it, although I've been asleep through the whole thing. And it was our Freedom Friday crew group chat. So with the Freedom Friday crew group chat, this story is what the topic of discussion was. And as a matter of fact, A.K. Kamara, who will be in here Friday on a Freedom Friday, he had talked about, going back to the first part of the year, a woman who had filed a sexual harassment complaint against the St. Paul mayor, but the judge ended up dismissing the charges. So you heard the audio there from Channel 5. The AI overlord summary on all of this, the St. Paul Police Chief Axel Henry filed a sexual harassment complaint against Mayor Cooley Herr, alleging inappropriate sexual comments and text messages. The complaint, addressed to the city attorney, calls for full system extraction of Herr's phones. This is going to get spicy. Herr's office stated they cannot comment on the active investigation. So I'm going to dive into further details of this coming up after 7 o'clock this morning. I'll give you a few here. I don't want to leave you in suspense, because what the actual text entails is really quite comical. Very befitting today, because one of the text messages, a screenshot, said, "Happy Wiener Wednesday. I wish I was having with parentheses, a hot dog emoji with you all on 6 today." Happy Wiener Wednesday. It's Wiener Wednesday on the Jon Justice Show, presented by American Experiment. All right, so Chris Maddle, who was representing Henry, told 5 Eyewitness News in a statement, Chief Henry just closed a triple homicide case in under 4 hours. He's got a city to keep safe and has no comment on this. In the letter, Maddle calls on the city attorney to take all steps necessary to perform a full file system extraction of HER's phones. A spokesperson from the mayor's office sent the following statement. To protect confidentiality, the integrity of the process, the city will not comment on an active investigation. The mayor has deep respect for city employees and regrets any unintended impact her actions might have had. By the way, her, just as a complete side note, the fact that we're referring to her as her, it's very confusing when you're doing notes. I have to okay, it's not capitalized. Mark Ross, the president of the St. Paul Police Federation, also sent a comment. Our obligation is to our membership, and the focus of the Federation will remain on supporting the rank and file members, okay, who are in the community, risking their lives every day. I'm not in a position to elaborate further on the situation, but I do want the community to rest assured that our focus is on serving them with the commitment, class, integrity that they have come to expect and deserve. So what we have here are a lot of individuals that simply do not want to comment on these allegations up front, and it's understandable. This is pretty typical when it comes to this type of investigation and these types of claims. Now, the letter in the city attorney claims that her, capital H, used one or more mobile phones to communicate inappropriate and indeed unlawful text messages. And this includes, as I mentioned, what appears to be a screenshot of a message saying, Happy Wiener Wednesday, wish I was having with a hot dog emoji, with you all on 6 today. A redacted picture is then included with the statement saying, when she wraps you up in her blanket after you gave her a good wienering with laughing emojis. A good wienering.
That's a tough read right there.
Oh, there's a lot of tough reads this morning, Isaac. Could I just say that up front?
You're starting hot.
Yes, I know. And I thought more about that as I was like, you know what, though? We're in a format where we can go right into it.
Exactly.
I used to couch my words quite a bit, and I'm still going to with the show. I had a whole conversation with Melinda about this, given the fact that we are, now broadcasting online. So that gives us a lot of freedom. If you've heard any of the audio clips that we've already played over the first 2 debut shows, I think you know that already. And every time one of those clips plays, because I'm not paying attention to whether or not the expletives are bleeped from the audio anymore, every single time it happens, though, I just think I get this rush of chemical panic. Like, ah! And I was like, oh, I forgot. I'm not on terrestrial radio anymore. I don't have to worry about it. Where's the dump button? I need the dump button. So I thought about maybe not going there this early this morning, but I'm like, you know what? This is what the new show affords me.
Why not?
Exactly. We'll wake everybody up with Wiener Wednesday and a good wienering. Maybe we should use that. I know we're doing a lot of promotion for the show right now. Maybe that's a good tagline.
Maybe it's a good T-shirt.
Oh, get a good wienering by listening to Jon Justice. I'm not sure American Experiment would sign on that. Yeah.
No, we should probably keep our logo.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that once that goes out the door right over there, it's going to go right into the waste bin right outside the door right over there.
Yeah, probably.
All right. That is allegedly just one of numerous inappropriate incidents involving her. That works both ways. The letter to the city attorney says they go beyond isolated incidents and extend to other city employees and police officers. It adds that Henry, this would be the police chief, St. Paul Police Chief Henry Axel, okay, adds that Henry came forward as a formal complainant over concerns that without doing so, the behavior, doing that thing with my fingers, the behavior will continue unchecked and may expose others to retaliation for speaking out. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's go to the blast this morning. If you want to leave us a blast, it's 612-584-4565. Again, 612-584-4565 if you want to leave us a blast.
Just wanted to apologize for making an inappropriate comment yesterday.
No need to apologize.
I take responsibility for it. I failed to recognize the mood and the tone of the conversation, and I guess I'm just too anxious to get back to Freedom Fridays and all the fun with A.K. Kamara and the other guests. So just wanted to apologize for that, and I want to do everything to make your show better and not add any negatives to it.
Oh, Bob, you have no reason to apologize. I was being sarcastic. Bob should know that by now. Bob goes way back with the show. Bob, you are all good. I have no issues at all, especially. Did you hear the opening conversation that we just had on the show? Long forgotten, Bob. I appreciate your input here on the Jon Justice Show.
DJ from St. Michael. Glad you're back on the radio. Just got to say, just watched the local Fox 9 coverage. I really hope you're going to talk about the allegations against the St. Paul mayor. The story referenced wiener and wienering. Great show as always, I'm guessing. Thanks.
Well, you know what? I'm here to please. I aim to please here on this show. So we'll get into more of this coming up after 7 o'clock. We're going to dive into the Star Tribune article. And I use the Star Tribune article just because reading from the Star Tribune a story about a DFLer who is now embroiled in this type of controversy, it brings warm feelings to this talk show host's heart. By the way, prepare to just witness the double standard that we all have to live with, not just here in Minnesota, but in America. The media is covering the story now because there's wieners and wienering involved. It'll get quite a bit of attention. I know the Freedom Friday crew is really hoping that the story is alive and well come Friday because they all want to weigh in on it. But make no mistake, this will not be handled in the same fashion if this was done by any Republican, any individual aligned with conservatism. And this is a comment that I've been making for years. I don't have any issue with how the media will go and handle this particular story. I have an example later on today. There's an update on the taxpayer-funded genital swapping dolls that we've been talking about the past 2 days. One of the local media outlets, I think it's Fox 9, but it might be KARE 11. But they did a very straightforward story on it. You know, fact-checking the gender doll issue, okay? That's fine. I'm fine with that. They don't provide any information that hasn't already been given out to everybody, mind you. And when it comes to the story of Cooley Her and the Wiener Wednesday and Wienering, they're going to cover this very straightforward and not provide a lot of commentary. I'm fine with that. What should happen, though, is when it does happen to a conservative or Republican, the reporting should be the same. And it never is. It always gets more attention. The focus of the story shifts to getting actualities and opinions from all these different people about the controversies, wherein the initial reporting over the story of Cooley Her, which might change, but the initial reporting was just straight up based on the facts. This is what's going on without any added opinion to it. So I will sit here not having any sort of expectations that there will be any deep dives into the psyche of the St. Paul mayor, given the severity of these allegations. But we will talk about it further coming up a little bit later on in the show. I want to touch upon this story just really quick. It's a fun one, but it does relate to something that we'll be talking about again next hour. So first off, Isaac, are you familiar with Jimothy the raccoon?
I am.
Okay. All right. You are familiar with
I am.
Okay, that's good. So for those that aren't, Jimothy is a raccoon who is dealing with a rare short spine condition. He's gone viral online after this video footage was released. It was so funny, too, because in a world where everybody's got a high quality, an HD phone in their pocket, we still end up getting these blurry videos when it comes to circumstances like this. I know they're catching Jimothy on the fly, but if you've seen the video of Jimothy, the short-spined, conditioned raccoon, it looks like an AI, generator took that classic Bigfoot footage and just replaced it with a short-spined raccoon. It's off in the distance. It's a little bit blurry, walking very similarly. But Jimothy has caught the country's imagination. You can now get Jimothy T-shirts and mugs. I think we're actually selling some Jon Justice Show presented by American Experiment Jimothy gear on the website. I think that might be maybe the official mascot is Showguru, who we still have to find he's over here behind me. He takes up the frame and hogs the focus of the camera if I put him on the table. So I bring this up because local media picked up on this, Fox 9 specifically. The story of Jimothy has brought attention to 2 Minnesota dogs. Do you have a dog, Isaac?
I do.
Okay, you seem like a dog dude.
Little black lab.
Nice.
Oh, I love her.
Okay, what's her name?
Harley.
Oh, how old is Harley?
Harley's about 3.
Okay, you have to send me a picture of Harley.
I will.
I want to see her. Oh, look at that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have Artemis. She's on. Artemis is on.
I know.
My
Every
phone
time
there.
you get a text, I see a little picture, and I'm like, oh.
I know. Yeah. If she was right here in front of you, she would be acting like she wants to eat your face off. Sweetest dog at home, but holy cow, is she ferocious if there's anybody that she doesn't know. So these 2 dogs, Quasi and Cooper, they share the same condition as Jimothy the raccoon. Despite the challenges, both dogs are thriving. Their owners emphasize the importance of responsible care for animals with this condition. Okay. So I dove into the story a little bit. So Quasi is a German Shepherd, came to Minnesota from Kentucky 10 years ago. His S-shaped spine is missing vertebrae, left the veterinarians puzzled. Cooper, an American foxhound, arrived from Virginia after Quasi's story made headlines. The 2 dogs live about 5 miles apart from each other in the Twin Cities metro, and they've actually hung out. They're friends. It's very sweet. They're humans, Terry Woolard and Eli Keegan. They're humans. That made me laugh a little bit. I know it's the appropriate way to go and write that, but they're humans. They're humans. Say veterinarians now have a better idea of how to care for the dogs. Okay, they're very well versed with Quasi. They know all of his ailments. They have a great team that is very used to him, said Woolard. Keegan added, we do annual x-rays with his veterinarians just to make sure everything is, we've got our eyes on everything. Hey, they're just like me. I have to do annual checkups on my heart. As a matter of fact, I have to end the show today right exactly at 9 o'clock because I have my televisit with my cardiologist today after which is really unnecessary. I got the results for my echocardiogram, and the notes are on there. Everything is fine.
We could just bring him on as a guest.
Oh, I should. I totally should. I'm pretty sure I can't do that legally unless I ask
Legally,
them.
yeah.
But they're basically going to get $300 out of me for doing this televisit, even though I already know what the conversation's going to be. It's going to be about 4 minutes. Everything looks good. Let's schedule another one for next year. Anyway, back to the dogs. Only 2 or 3 dozen short-spined dogs are known worldwide. Fox 9 has followed Quasi and Cooper's story for over a decade. Both dogs are thriving. Quasi is now 13, and Cooper is almost 10. You don't realize when. Well, I didn't. I won't speak for you listening to the show. I didn't realize. I didn't realize growing up with pets, like how short those lifespans are. It never really came into my mind. Even when we had Bella, who we lost, several years ago now, at a relatively early age, she was dealing with some issues, and we had to say goodbye to Bella, best dog ever. Wherein I said we were going to wait a while before we got another dog, and I think we got Artemis inside of like a month or 2. Right, because you just can't wait. But you don't realize, how that when you're younger, you don't realize the short time span that you have with your pets, with your dogs, and with your cats. And I'm experiencing that now with Artemis. I got a little sad last night because we were hanging out watching TV. The new episode of The World's Ugliest Homes the new season has started. Melinda and I love wiping out on that show. But I noticed on Artemis's snout, she's leaning a little gray. And I asked Melinda, because I completely forgot how old she was. And Melinda was like, oh, she's 6. I was like, oh, I know. I want her to be around forever. Anyway, back to this story. Quasi has outlived the average German Shepherd's lifespan. He's been thriving. He runs, plays a lot, obviously a lot less, his human said. He's an old man now. Cooper is still playful like Quasi. He loves attention from people. Cooper has never scratched an itch in his life, so I always call myself the VP of itches and scratches. Oh, I get it. That's because he scratches for him. Okay. So Quasi and Cooper's Facebook pages update fans about their everyday lives and help other short-spine dogs find homes. And this is the point. I bring all this up. One, because of Jimothy and how Jimothy has been this viral sensation. Okay. But the owners want to make sure that Jimothy's popularity and their dog's success do not encourage people to breed animals for this rare condition. We are seeing the other side of it where people are like, oh, I want a short spine. That's so cool. So I kind of worry that me and Cooper's mom both are people going to start trying to breed for short-spined dogs. That would be very unfortunate. Quasi is great. Cooper is great. Jimothy is great. But they also come with many health issues. We want to support the animals that are born with this condition, but we do not want to recreate it in any way. So this is a bit of a stretch here. I fully admit that. But this is where my mind went when I was talking about this story. You know, we have an update later, as I mentioned, on the ridiculous taxpayer-funded gender genital swapping paper dolls that Governor Dimwalls signed off on in terms of the funding to go for this. And we'll do the fact check that I mentioned earlier that local media did on this. But, you know, you read a story like this, and there will be the owners of these two unique dogs are absolutely correct. There will be individuals out there saying, I want a genetically mutated dog. Okay? It's tragic and it's unfortunate. You know, but I wonder how many of those individuals, right, have thought about the issue relating to what we're doing to young people as well. You know, the left's agenda. Like, for example, if you were to say, ask Dimwalls about this story, and then and get his take on it. I would love to hear his take, and then subsequently bring up the fact that here you have the left's agenda, right, supporting surgical, chemical, bodily changes to underage children, and how much mass support that ends up receiving from those politicians on the left. You know, people would freak out if you were starting to breed animals that had this type of condition just to have them as pets because it was cool. But how many of those people align with the left's agenda regarding what's been happening to our children? And again, I know it's a bit of a stretch from this, but that's where my head went, because there is such a double standard. Maybe that's going to be the theme of today's show. There'll be a double standard regarding the Cooley-Her controversy, and we'll see how that shakes out and talk about it more at 9 o'clock this morning. And there absolutely is a double standard relating to what's been happening to our young people across the country and how the left has continually and still pushes to exploit our most vulnerable. Because you know what happens to a child who ends up going through those transitions that are supported by Democrats, by those radical whack jobs on the left? They're going to deal with negative health consequences for the rest of their lives, many of which we're not even aware of yet. People do not realize how fragile our bodies actually are. What a blessing that these dogs' owners dealing with this condition have been able to live a long and thriving life. But it was also a naturally occurring condition. What we're allowing to take place when it comes to our most vulnerable, it's criminal. And I say this from a position where I know what I'm talking about because I know how fragile our bodies are. Right? God created us, right, in his image, but also because of sin in the world, right? We all sin and fall short of the glory of God. Unfortunately, we're flawed. Our bodies are flawed. They're in this delicate balance that as you get older, you have to maintain a certain lifestyle to remain healthy. It's hard enough if you're just taking care of yourself as an average human being to keep your body healthy. It's something wholly different when you're actually going and intentionally making changes, whether you're an adult, and certainly with what's been happening to our children across the country. I was going to hold off on this clip, but it's relevant to what I'm talking about right now, and we do have some blasts that have rolled in, 612-584-4565. But there is a Florida Democrat governor candidate, David Jolly, and he's calling laws that are banning sex change surgery for minors. I'll play the clip. Listen to what he has to say, because there are laws being put forward, appropriate laws, that should be passed, banning the ability of inflicting this type of harm upon our children. And listen to what this lunatic Democrat candidate in Florida has to say about those laws.
And as a family, we embraced it. We sought the right pathways, the medical pathways, the gender-affirming care for this grandchild. And this was when Tallahassee was wrestling with this really, draconian legislation during a special session called about insurance, I think, led them to this other issue. And he said, look, if this legislation passes, the doctor will be arrested for continuing to care for my grandchild. The parents could lose their child. Their child could be removed from their home.
He calls them draconian. What kind of twisted mind? What kind of morally corrupt individual would think of a law that would prevent underage children from being harmed through dangerous gender reassignment healthcare? Draconian. Dude, it's the other way. Draconian is doing these types of dangerous experiments on our most vulnerable in the country. I mean, you want to talk about what's indicative of the Democrat Party right now? They are wholly corrupt and lost as a party right now. We're going to talk a little Amy Klobuchar after my conversation with Lieutenant Governor candidate Ryan Wilson in the 8 o'clock hour. But I did a radio interview yesterday with the flag up north, and we were getting into this conversation of where the Democrat Party currently is, how radical they've become, and the host of the show was pointing out that in their mind, and they're right, they find it interesting that Amy Klobuchar is suddenly now beginning to move away from that sort of senator of small things, moderate stance. And some of her commentary as of late has become more extreme. And I'm just wondering how much the Klobuchar campaign camp and her personally is wrestling with this idea that she's always cast to herself as being this sort of middle ground moderate. She's not, but that's how she's presented herself. And yet even she, in the wake of this governor's race, and with the Democrat socialists taking over, the radical, hardcore leftists that have co-opted and taken over the party, even she can't escape the fact that, you know what, she needs their support too, and she's going to need to start leaning that direction as well. We're going to continue with this commentary coming up again next hour here on the show. Let's go back and hear from you. Leave a blast at 612-584-4565. And remember, you can email me too, john.justice@americanexperiment.org.
Good morning, John. Friend of the show, Holly and Blaine. Did you start your show at 5 a.m. this morning? I got up at about 5:30 and turned on the Mixler app at a little after 6, and the show's been running for an hour already. Just kind of wanted to know what I missed. Thanks. Have a good day. Bye.
So because of the way that we're doing the show, we have some really cool opportunities to do some unique things when producing the show. And what we decided to do was to replay. I get in super early to get my notes done. And if you happen to be watching on the live stream before 6 a.m., I actually turned the camera on for a bit while I was working for those that were interested in seeing me do notes. I don't know. Wanted to change it up. It was there. I clicked off the little image. But we're doing a replay of the previous day's show in the run-up to today's show. So if you get up early, if you get up earlier than 6, and maybe you missed a portion of Tuesday's show, you should be able to every morning, provided that I get here on time and get it up and running, you should be able to hear a replay of the show. So that's why it was running an hour before the show had started. And so this is something that came to mind after we were sort of finished getting all of our equipment and the show all ready to go. And I was like, you know what? We've got some really good opportunities to do some cool and unique things on the show. Let's take advantage of it. So a replay of the previous day's show before the start of the show at 6 o'clock is what we have planned moving forward here on the Jon Justice Show presented by American Experiment.
I'm going to remain anonymous, but I also now understand why St. Paul is drowning in debt. Mayor Herr needs to set her sights a little higher. Yeah. Wiener Wednesday, hey, it's state fair time. Let's talk prawn and pups.
I'm not 100% sure, Isaac, where she was going there. And to be quite honest with you, I don't really want to know. I think there were pronto pups involved. Is that what is that?
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I think that's one of those blasts that's better left unsolved at this point in time. But okay, she wanted to remain anonymous, so I can see her name. I'll leave her. I will do you a favor, and I will leave you anonymous this morning.
I can see it already done. All of the crazy lefties will be protesting in St. Paul this weekend with their wiener costumes on to support Mayor Herr. I just can see it now.
Well, and that's what's, and I don't want to get too far ahead of the commentary that I'll provide after 7 o'clock this morning, but if you're on the left, and let's just say for the sake of argument that Wiener Wednesdays and the wienering texts and all the claims by the St. Paul police chief that we talked about at the start of the show with this harassment claim, let's just say for the sake of argument that it's all completely and totally accurate and she did all these things, okay? And again, it's just, we don't know yet. It's an investigation. The whole thing will play out. But if it is, does anybody on the left actually care? I mean, you should. Conduct of individuals in positions of power, right? It should be pretty straightforward. Do the right thing. Don't do stupid stuff. We've talked about that on the show, even when it comes to Republicans. I just, the way the Democrat Party is conducting itself right now, I don't think most people care. They'll say it's female empowerment that she sent the wienering texts, and who are we to go and criticize a woman who is simply expressing her sexuality through emojis? Maybe I would make a good leftist commentator. I'm not going to try that out, by the way.
The city attorney is appointed by the mayor and works basically for the mayor. So to investigate an issue between the mayor and the chief, they're going to have to hire an independent law firm or a business to do the investigation. So I think that's what we're going to hear very soon. Oh, and by the way, John, I'm glad you're back on the air. It is such a pleasure to listen to you again. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe they need to get lawyer extraordinaire Jeff O'Brien on the case. Need to get him on the show very soon as well.
John, Mike from Minnetonka.
Hey, Mike.
100%. If these allegations were made against someone in the Republican Party, every talking head or wannabe from the Democrats would be screaming for a resignation before the investigation even started.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous double standard.
Well, and listen, that raises the question of whether or not Republicans should go and do the same thing. I don't believe so. Don't misunderstand. Okay. Politics, modern day politics, is a very different game than what it's been in the past. You've got to take your opportunities and run with them. But I also firmly believe in keeping a level of integrity. These are just allegations, regardless of who's involved. I would want the same type of leniency if this were a Republican doing this as well. But you're right. If this were a Republican doing this, the Democrats would be seizing on the moment, running with it, and calling for her to resign. And I wouldn't begrudge anybody on the right who was doing the same thing. I wouldn't do that personally because, again, I believe in letting the process go and play out fully. Let's grab one more blast from 612-584-4565. Then I want to turn our attention over to the fact that Anthony Fauci is set to testify today, and I have some commentary on that here on the Jon Justice Show.
Good morning, John. Happy Wednesday or Wiener Day or whatever we're calling it. So isn't Kahuli the same one who claims her family is not a citizen, she's not a citizen?
Yep.
So now American police chiefs are being harassed by non-citizen sexual crazed mayors. Crazy. Have a great day. Bye.
Yeah, there is some, and I have to dig it up, but I believe there's some quote from Kahuli and I could be getting this wrong, where she claimed that she was demisexual, and because she was demisexual, she actually doesn't get her hookita on very, very often. That's my more, Isaac, that's my cleaner way of talking about sex. I just want to hookita.
That works.
Yeah. Of course, now I can just, be more straightforward about it. So we will get into further details of that controversy. Thank you all who have left the blast so far, 612-584-4565. And again, the email, john.justice@americanexperiment.org. All right, let's go here. This story's been sitting in the stack from Monday and yesterday. Didn't get a chance to dive into it. So the hearing will take place today. So I suppose this is going to be even more relevant. Dr. Anthony Fauci set to testify before a Senate committee where he will be questioned by Senator Rand Paul about his diaries. So these new Fauci diaries reveal the celebrity obsession that Anthony Fauci had at the height of the COVID crisis. Paul released over 1,000 pages of Fauci's diaries, claiming that they show Fauci's private and public statements contradict each other. Critics have accused Fauci of being obsessed with fame and contradicting himself during the COVID-19 pandemic. And once again, thank you to our AI overlords for providing us with that summary. Daily Wire has coverage on the story regarding the diaries. So Fauci, of course, was the former chief medical advisor to the president, appeared consumed with media attention and his growing public image as the coronavirus pandemic claimed the lives of individuals and overwhelmed hospitals around the globe. We all saw this firsthand. You could see the arrogance on his face. You could hear the celebrity in his tone. The dude thought that he was a rock star. I mean, I certainly didn't need these diaries to go and prove that point to me. I think, again, we all saw it with our own eyes. Needless to say, this actually goes and exposes what we had all already kind of known. The document shedding light on the COVID advisor's obsession with his public profile at the height of the years-long pandemic. Inside the near-daily journal entries chronicled Fauci's nonstop media appearances on local and national outlets, reaching a level of publicity that Fauci himself couldn't help but blush at. The Daily Wire published excerpts from Fauci's journal without any edits or spelling corrections. So here's one. Press is still hot and heavy about me, Fauci wrote on April 7th of 2020. Multiple stories per day, directly or indirectly involving me. Oh, the little guy was so happy. Of course, weeks later, infection spread around the world. 10,000 had died from the virus when Fauci penned the following journal entry on May 21st of 2020. Big front page article about me appeared in the Washington Post. Very flattering. The situation with my national and international fame is explosive and really unimaginable. It is not the hyperbole to say that today I'm the most famous and talked about person in the country and one of the most recognized people in the world. Isn't it so typical? Isn't it so typical of an individual who essentially ended up dictating a huge portion of the way that the country and the world responded to COVID? Much of it, flat out wrong. Flat out wrong. I've talked about it many times. I was wrong when the COVID-19 pandemic started, like a lot of people were. I believed stupidly, that 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I did not believe that the government would go and try to take advantage of this. And I was totally wrong. Totally wrong. All we did was slow the inevitable. That's all that happened. More people probably died. We shouldn't have been putting people on ventilators. Governor Jim Walz, Cuomo in New York, they're responsible for thousands of deaths combined by shoving individuals into nursing homes where we now know the virus was just spreading around, keeping everybody in their homes when we should have been outside getting fresh air. The idea that this little tiny piece of cloth can stop you from catching the virus, the idea that the vaccine was actually a vaccine and it wasn't. And what is this little pathetic man more concerned about? His new rise to fame and celebrity status. Countless profiles on me in multiple media. I cannot even read all the things that are written about me since I am so busy. Seriously. POTUS seems to be enamored of me, even though I am taking the spotlight away from him. We are developing a very unique and interesting relationship, he added. I've seen this happen. People often, through no fault of their own, they end up with a false view of individuals who are media personalities or politicians. It's almost like a subconscious thing where we kind of place them on another level. Now, there's some legitimacy to that. So in Fauci's case, here's an individual who's supposed to be knowledgeable about this horrible situation that we are all now having to be faced with in the form of a global pandemic that we've never experienced before in our lives. So we're looking for people that we can go and trust to give us the proper information to deal with this. But often with that desire for leadership, we overlook the fact that these are still incredibly flawed, sinful human beings. And this is certainly the case when it comes to Fauci. We had our own version of this here in Minnesota. Michael Alsterholm, for those that remember that fool, who had books to sell, and as I've mentioned so many times, selling books is hard. But he was very much enamored with himself and his own celebrity. At least that's the perception that I took from the time when he was speaking to local media about these issues. It seemed in the beginning, much like Fauci, Osterholm was genuinely concerned and knowledgeable about these types of pandemics, being an expert, doing nothing with my fingers in the field. But it was clear that in a very short period of time, he was way more interested in just getting on as many, news shows, local and national, that he possibly could because he liked the attention. I've seen this happen to people that I've had on the show. Thankfully, not here in Minnesota, but in other places where I've worked, where they get just a little teeny tiny bit of celebrity and it goes straight to their heads because, again, we're all flawed people and often can't go and handle these types of things. Now, with regard to Fauci and his testimony later on today, RFK Jr. was on Fox News yesterday. A lot of commentary, right? And a lot of expectation when it comes to this hearing taking place, and certainly because of these diaries that were released. But RFK Jr. was on Fox News talking about Anthony Fauci. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
He lied about masks. He lied about social distancing. He lied about the transmission. He lied about natural immunity. He lied about the capacity, as you just said, of the vaccine to prevent infection. He got vaccinated, a very, very public press conference in January of 2020. And then 5 months later, he had, and this is the first time that we knew this from the diary, he had a pulmonary infarction, which is one of the adverse events that NIH, CDC, and FDA said are expected from the vaccine. He never told anybody. He got treated for it privately by the best doctors in America. At the same time, he was telling everybody that that was not an adverse event.
Is there anything else we're missing from these diaries that has not been released that you can share with us tonight?
I don't think, I have to say a lot of this stuff is in my book, but based upon other documents. But there's something very dramatic, even for me, of seeing him write it in his own journal, confessing to being wrong, to lying about all
also
this
loving
stuff.
his own press. I mean, they're going on and on. Well, I'm the most famous person in the world, internationally and nationally. I can't even go out to a restaurant because people want to take pictures of me.
Of course, that was Laura Ingraham, and they're right. And it's funny because it drives home the point. And in the middle of hearing that exchange between RFK Jr. and Laura, it kind of even hit harder for me. I mean, we were in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. People were dying. This was a guy who was looked at as an authority. Even if I don't necessarily have a problem that he was obsessed with his own celebrity, but dude, read the room already. I mean, I guess the expectation was that these diaries were confidential. I don't know the exact details of how they got a handle on them. Let's get back to a little bit more of what was said in these. Fauci also recounted how the Secret Service agents routinely waved him through the White House gates without asking to see his badge, often striking up casual conversations. Everyone is worried about my health and welfare, probably because it's all over the place that I'm almost 80 years old. About a month later, Fauci admitted to telling his counterpart, Dr. Deborah Birx, that the administration's infamous contact tracing and isolation strategy to combat the virus was a blanking disaster and an abject failure. The infatuation with television hits did not stop as the virus abated in parts of the country, and red state governors started reopening measures. In a June 29th meeting with then Vice President Mike Pence, Fauci pleaded to get back on the big screens. I told him that I'm being blocked from TV. I need to get on TV to give a risk reduction message, and that I would avoid being pitted against him or the POTUS merely by not playing that game, he wrote. He did promise that he would get me out there on the TVs since he really liked my message. First time anyone ever spoke that way to the VP. He truly likes me a lot, and vice versa. Now we have to get the POTUS press people to agree. Interesting intrigue in the White House. POTUS people versus VP people, he added, suggesting the internal divisions at the time over the public relations strategy. It raises the question in my mind of how much did Fauci, and we'll never know the answer to this, but how much did Fauci skew his commentary in the wake of his celebrity status, right? The legend in his own mind that he had created. I'll give a real world example and a personal example. You know, I've done a lot of hits on Laura Ingraham. According to some foes of the show on X, I'm a Laura shill. I don't know. They ask me to go on, I go on.
You shill.
Nobody's paying me anything, right?
You go on when they ask you to.
Well, I know. I've seen. They've shared with me, Isaac, those text exchanges that I haven't seen where you've called me a shill. So don't you. But apparently, I'm a Laura shill.
Wait until our diaries get leaked.
Right. The point I want to make, though, is that when you go on those shows, you want to have something good to say. Of course, right? You want your commentary to be worthy of getting national exposure. You want to be able to present something that maybe people haven't heard before. That's what I try to do. If I'm going to have the opportunity to speak to a national audience, I want to make the most of it. I'm going to be genuine. I'm going to be authentic. Sometimes I'm going to be super stupid as I make my commentary, but I want it to be interesting. But we're talking about a wholly different situation with a global pandemic that is costing individuals their lives on a daily basis. And one cannot help but wonder when it comes to Anthony Fauci, how much of his commentary wasn't relevant relating to the severity of the virus that he gave to the press is simply because he was so infatuated with his own quasi-celebrity status.
Hi, good morning, John. Rich here. So, Anthony Fauci, he got his shot and then he didn't take any more, but he still pushed the shot to everybody else. And as far as, the Rand Paul, if everybody, all the Republicans would waive their time and give it to Rand Paul, we'd get through a lot more. And as far as the cop in St. Paul, they'll farm that out to like the head of the county attorney's office. That's where they'll get the ruling that they want for no prosecution.
Okay. Rich, it's great to hear from you. You're also providing me an opportunity. When you leave a blast, let's just stick to the topic. Freedom Friday, you can cover all the bases. I do appreciate that Richard was making sure that he was commenting on all the stories, although I didn't hear an opinion, Rich, about Jimothy. I suppose that's on me. Of all the stories that I've covered so far, Jimothy is probably the least interesting one. But thank you for the blast. Greatly appreciate it. Let's go back to the blaster line, 612-584-4565, and we'll hear from a friend of the show, Jeff.
Yeah, Dr. Fauci was a complete moron and didn't know what he was talking about. He just wanted to hear his voice as much as he could. Not write on anything. He go, no mask, distance. But let's all listen to that superstar Fauci. Couldn't stand the man. Disdain for him, great disdain. What he did is he cost us trillions of dollars and millions of lives. He should be in jail. And then capital punishment following for that old man.
Thank you so much for the comment. From the blaster line, again, 612-584-4565. In a related story, specifically regarding COVID, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and this broke earlier in the week, but I wanted to make sure I gave it some attention. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers found vials of porcine epidemic diarrhea virus. I don't think this has any relation to what had happened to people eating the lettuce at Taco Bell. That was all over social media for a hot minute last week, although hot is probably not the word that I should use attached to a story of people having to spend a lot of time in the bathroom after eating Taco Bell lettuce. But these vials of porcine epidemic diarrhea virus, a highly dangerous coronavirus, on a courier at a Detroit Metropolitan Airport in 2018. The courier claimed the vials were intended for Fang Li, a researcher at the University of Minnesota who has connections to the Chinese military. Oh, somebody called Dim Walls. Big fan of China. This incident raises concerns about the potential risks to U.S. National security posed by research collaborations between American and Chinese scientists. Oh, man. You know, it brings up the lonely highway theory with this one, because this goes back to 2018. Obviously, it's just not getting exposure. For those that are unfamiliar with the lonely highway theory, the idea is that if you're speeding on a highway and you get pulled over by law enforcement because they happen to be out there, and you say, officer, this is the first time that I've ever sped on this road. Right? The truth of the matter is, no, it's not. You've been driving on this highway a bunch. Usually there's no cops around. Right? You've been speeding all the time. You just now got caught. That's the lonely highway theory. So the lonely highway theory applies to this. How many vials were not found? Ended up in the hands of individuals with connections to the Chinese military. Again, somebody should probably go and call Dim Walls. All right. Coming up. St. Paul Mayor. Her investigated for sexual harassment allegations involving the police chief. The city hired an outside law firm for the probe after Chief Axel Henry filed a formal complaint alleging inappropriate conduct toward city employees. We have protest plans for the attempts to close the homeless encampments, fact checks on the Gender Dolls program, and a fascinating piece that I'm really, it's really important in my opinion, that I'm really looking forward to sharing with you, of an individual who has firsthand experience in sexual exploitation of prostitutes, right, young people, pushing back on the Minneapolis bathhouse ordinance. It is a fantastic editorial that, again, I think it's really important that people hear. I'll share it with you coming up in the next hour here on the Jon Justice Show, presented by American Experiment. We'll take a brief intermission. We'll hear from Center of the American Experiment and commentary that you might have missed as of late from the American Experiment podcast, including American Experiment's Matt Dean discussing with Katherine Johnson one of his most recent pieces. So take a listen to what you might have missed in terms of the content provided here at Center of the American Experiment, and we're back in just a minute here on the Jon Justice Show, presented by American
I
Experiment.
looked it up, and the percentage of children in poverty in Minnesota is about 10%, which is lower than the national average. So how come somewhere around a third, 33%, say, of children in Minnesota are on Medicaid if they aren't poor?
Sure, my kids are grown now, but I had 3 kids that I raised, and for us, we could make over $100,000 a year, and still our kids would be on Medicaid, if you can imagine that. That's middle class. That's crazy. And, we also, as a state, I think we should really measure ourselves by how few people have to rely on the government for health care, not how many. But if you ask, Governor Walz, he'll say, the more people we feed, the better. The more people on government programs, the better. And that's really how he measures the state. And we really see that in the numbers in Medicaid, which have just exploded.
Think about it. Now that school's back in session, how are Minnesota students doing? Not very well. Minnesota ACT scores fell again last year and are the lowest they've been in 10 years. In fact, fewer than half of Minnesota students can either read or do math at grade level. Think about it. We used to brag about our schools. Now we're losing to states like Mississippi. Visit AmericanExperiment.org for more information. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
We're doing a really big deep dive on Medicaid right now at the center. We're looking at just how the heck this has gotten so out of control in Minnesota. And just like since 2023, okay, we spent $18 billion on Medicaid in the state, okay? Now we are spending $27 billion in this year, okay? And we are spending that on fewer people on Medicaid. So there was 1.4 million people on Medicaid in 2023. Now there is 1.2. So you have to ask yourself, how in the heck can we be spending that much more money on Medicaid? And we're really looking into that because we think a lot of that money is going to people who are dead, people who live in other states, people who are on more than one program. And you are not surprised because you've seen that on so many different programs in the state of Minnesota. But Medicaid is by far the biggest enchilada when it comes to that.
Think about it. Now that school's out for the summer, how are Minnesota students doing? Not very well. Minnesota ACT scores fell again last year and are the lowest they've been in 10 years. In fact, fewer than half of Minnesota students can either read or do math at grade level. Think about it. We used to brag about our schools. Now we're losing to states like Mississippi. Visit AmericanExperiment.org for more information. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
It is the Jon Justice Show, presented by American Experiment.
Hey, John, this is Carl from the fifth floor. Glad to hear your voice on the radio, so to speak. Real quick question, is it MixLR or is it Mixler? Because you kind of got RZR and Razor screwed up last time. Anyway, just having fun. Glad to hear you on the radio, so to speak. Stay frosty.
Carl, that's Mr. Zur to you. Just so we're clear. It's Mr. Zur, almost the name of my car. Welcome into hour 2 of the Jon Justice Show, presented by American Experiment. Glad you're with the show this morning. If you want to email me, john.justice@americanexperiment.org. You can leave us a comment. We're calling them blasts. Leave us a blast. All you have to do is call 612-584-4565. Again, 612-584-4565. 4565. Now, to your point, you can listen to the show at AmericanExperiment.org. You can also listen through the, I'm calling it Mixlr, MixLR, and now I'm saying Mixlr. I was saying MixLR before, but now suddenly I'm landing on Mixlr. I don't know. Isaac, do you have a firm opinion on this?
I don't, surprisingly.
Okay. Yeah. Doesn't really matter. Potato, potato.
Yeah.
Tomato, tomato.
Guitar, cutter.
Call it what you want. Well, no, you established that it was...
It's guitar.
Guitar.
It is.
And I'm taking your word for it. So you can listen on the app. That is completely free to download. The podcasts are now available on the MixLR app as well. You can watch and listen to the show live on X at the MN Think Tank page, their profile at MN Think Tank. And, of course, we are streaming the show where you can watch on Facebook and YouTube, both my pages, Jon Justice, and Center of the American Experiment. We wanted to provide as many options for you to listen and watch as possible. If you're interested in advertising on the show, and they are currently lining up, of which I'm really incredibly excited to bring aboard some sponsors, some new, some old. You can drop me an email, jon.justice@americanexperiment.org, and I will get you in contact with the proper individuals that can help facilitate you being able to advertise your goods and services on this very program, where we're breaking new ground. I did an interview with Catherine and Grace on the American Experiment podcast this week, and this is where things are heading. As we put this show together for a live 3-hour show every single day in the wake of my leaving the terrestrial radio job, which I kind of knew was an inevitability. This is where things were going. It was just a matter of, it wasn't a matter of if, but of when. And it's been one of the best things that could have happened, and I'm so excited to be here with American Experiment. One more item of note to make you aware of. If you're interested in getting a cool Jon Justice Show embroidered hat, which are featured right here if you're watching on any of the live feeds, make a donation at AmericanExperiment.org, and you get one of those fancy hats for free. Also, I think the mugs, which you can also see if you're watching online, I believe the mugs are now available or will be available on the merchandise site at AmericanExperiment.org. But the hats are fantastic. They did a great job with them. As I mentioned yesterday, my 19-year-old son, Kyle, was very excited that the logo was embroidered. That was a big deal for the youngins. And we'll have some more items very, very soon to share that you can go and purchase. But head on over to AmericanExperiment.org and make a donation. And you can pick yourself up a free Jon Justice Show hat. All right, we'll get back to more of your blasts coming up in just a moment on the show. But let's dive back into the big story of the morning. And we'll work off the Minnesota Star Tribune version of this for those that are just joining. The city of St. Paul has hired an outside law firm to investigate sexual harassment allegations against Mayor Cooley Herr, including claims that she directed inappropriate sexual comments toward the police chief, Axel Henry, and other city employees. Listen, the allegation alone, or the suggestion that these were inappropriate, right, regardless of the motivation, should already bring pause to people. Like, this seems like a situation where it could have been easily remedied, and I would be curious to know what sort of conversations were taking place. And what I mean by this is if Isaac sends me something that I believe is inappropriate, as us being, working for the same company, the easy solution is to go to Isaac. Or maybe I shouldn't put it under you. I send something to Isaac that's inappropriate. Let's go that route instead. Instead of making you the bad guy, I'll make myself the bad guy. I send something inappropriate to Isaac. My guess is Isaac would come to me and said, Jon, what was your intention with this? And can you not? And then end of story. That's how that goes down. I mean, I don't know you that well, Isaac, but I would imagine that's how it would go down, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
You would come to me.
Yeah.
Or just text me back. What did you mean by this? Or don't ever send this to me again.
I go, huh? Question mark? That's probably what I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. I responded to a lot of listener emails with that exact response yesterday. Just, huh? Question mark. Yet here, it's now gone into a full-fledged investigation. So were there conversations with the police chief and Cooley Herr and they didn't stop? How many of these messages are there? The Minnesota Star Tribune obtained an April 1st letter by Henry's attorney, Chris Maddle, to the St. Paul City Attorney, Irene Kao, notifying the city that Henry had filed a formal complaint. Sidebar to this whole thing, as I use a little lawyer speak, if Chris Maddle doesn't write a book or there isn't a documentary based off of the number of various cases and situations and investigations that he has served in an official capacity of, right, he will have failed society. Like, how many outlandish stories, issues, controversies, investigations, and lawsuits can one attorney handle? I, for one, am waiting for the Netflix documentary. Maddle, city attorney. Or whatever his official title is. Chief Henry has reached the decision to step forward as a formal complainant against the mayor after becoming aware that the mayor's conduct has extended beyond isolated incidents and has included sexual harassment of subordinate city employees, including members of the St. Paul Police Department. In choosing to name himself as the complainant, the letter read, Chief Henry is not only seeking to address the wrongdoing, but also create a measure of protection for his team, signaling that such conduct will not be tolerated. Well, I think the first layer of protection for the team would be to block Mayor Cooley Herr from being able to go and text him anything. That's what I'd do. I believe my understanding here, as I'm being sarcastic, is that more than likely this protection is more from the allegations coming forward and any sort of negative reprisals that may occur coming from Herr's office against the individual stepping forward to make these allegations and claims. In a statement, Herr's spokesperson, Matt Wagenius, he's quite the Wagenius, would not comment on the investigation. If somebody had just sent me Matt's last name via text, I would have thought that was offensive. The mayor has deep respect for the city employee. It's the way it looks on the page. It's like wagon with an E and then Neus. So Wagenius. The mayor has deep respect for city employees and regrets any unintended impact her actions may have had, Wagenius said. That is a pretty cool last name. I know I'm having fun, but I'm a Wagenius. Who's a Wagenius? I'm a Wagenius. Included in the letter is a screenshot of a text message allegedly sent by her to a city employee that reads, "Happy Wiener Wednesday!" ! And a note expressing regret that she can't be with the employee to eat a hot dog that day. It's always a bummer when you can't enjoy a good hot dog with a fellow employee, especially one that's got a hot dog and beans. There's a recall to a first dry run show.
Love that. We love a good recall.
Yeah. Early on in the inception of the Jon Justice Show presented by American Experiment. Beneath the message was a partly redacted image showing a swaddled baby. According to a person familiar with the inquiry who spoke on a condition of anonymity, because they were not authorized to discuss the matter, the redacted part of the image was the face of a St. Paul police officer assigned to her security detail, superimposed on the baby's body. Ugh. I haven't seen the image. I'm going to venture a guess that it's probably a bad Photoshop.
Ooh, can't be doing that.
Yeah. Above the photo, a message read that when she wraps you in a blanket after you gave her a good wienering with 2 laughing emojis. So you're beginning to see the picture here, right? So we've got Happy Wiener Wednesday. You have a note of regret saying that she can't be with the employee to eat a hot dog that day. And then that's with a swaddled baby and the comment with a superimposed image of a law enforcement officer who is allegedly part of her security detail. When she wraps you in a blanket, meaning the picture would be representative of this. When she wraps you in a blanket after you gave her a good wienering. Ugh.
I don't like that. I don't like that one bit.
You know what I do like? I do love the fact that the Star Tribune actually wrote this sentence. The term wienering, doing that thing with my fingers, this is what the Star Tribune wrote. The term wienering is often used as a sexual innuendo on the internet. Thanks, Star Tribune. Would have been lost on that one. What do they mean? What is this wienering?
Why do they like hot dogs so much?
Yeah, what's going on? Was there ketchup and mustard involved? As a if I eat a hot dog, am I wienering it? I don't know. What happens when you wiener somebody on the 4th of July? According to people familiar with the St. Paul Police Department, a civilian employee typically brings in hot dogs for a small group of staff on Wednesdays. Oh, it's kind of like what we do here at Center of the American Experiment. We got free food coming on Wednesdays. It is not Wiener Wednesdays here, by the way. It's much more family friendly. Which is informally dubbed Wiener Wednesdays to some employees, like Taco Tuesday, but different. In a letter, Maddle claims that the city is on notice that the mayor, has engaged in illegal conduct towards city employees while arguing that future litigation is reasonably foreseeable. Maddle demanded that the city immediately take all steps necessary to perform a full file system extraction of each of Mayor Herr's mobile phones. I hope they pull that off. Probably shouldn't use that terminology in the wake of doing the details of this story, but I hope that we do get that extraction. Also don't want to use that word either. Of Herr's text, because I get the feeling that this whole story is just going to explode. No pun intended. Happy Wiener Wednesday. The extraction would copy data off Herr's phones, including text messages across multiple applications, photos, videos, contacts, and emails. So I'm assuming those have to be archived. Like if I'm Cooley Herr and and I'm aware that there's going to be potential extraction of my messages, I mean, you're scrambling to delete everything, but I have to imagine those have got to be archived with the telephone company. At least that's my guess. All right, let's go and back to the blaster line. 612-584-4565, where a friend of the show, Kenny, has left us a blast.
John, Kenny, hey, this thing regarding Cooley Herr seems like some sort of plan for the DFL to uninstall somebody who was duly elected. If you can consider duly elected, that's stupid ranked choice voting. But anyway, this stinks to high heavens and smells like somebody's trying to install a new candidate, brand new mayor in St. Paul.
The conspiracy theories are already forming. Yeah, maybe, or it could just be this is what it seems to be. Could you say, by the way, so he said he questioned her being duly elected. So in this case, could you say that she's coolly elected? Oh, I got a dismissive head shake from
Boo.
Isaac. There it is. Out of all the stupid jokes that I've already done this morning, that's the one that I get the it was pretty bad. Coolly elected. A person familiar with the investigation said that it also includes sexualized communications and unwanted physical contact from her directed at Henry. You know, as a sidebar, just not knowing very much about Cooley Herr at all, right? I'm kind of surprised it's coming out of this little woman. If any of this is true, what a randy little lady. Who knew? You know what? To each their own. To each their own. All right, I am very pleased. A blast has just arrived to 612-584-4565. I had received other blasts earlier this morning asking a very important question. And that question was, where is friend of the show, Scott? For those that are unfamiliar, and Isaac included, Scott is he's a top tier friend of the show. And Scott, we would have what we called the ScottCon level, because it would be what level of enthusiasm. Yes, so instead of DEF CON, it's ScottCon. So we would guess what kind of level of enthusiasm would friend of the show Scott exude in his in his talkback. Now, I can cheat. I haven't heard it yet, but I can see the transcript. On a 1 to 5 scale in terms of Scott Conn, I'm going to probably give this, without having heard it, I'm going to give it a 3. But here is friend of the show, Scott, on the Jon Justice Show.
Good morning, John. Welcome back. As to the Axel Henry situation and the mayor of St. Paul, I know Axel Henry a little bit, and he is one straight-shooting person of the highest ethical and moral character. So I have no doubt that there is something far greater going on to get him to do what he did. Everybody have a great day. So happy to have you back, John.
You know what, Scott? I'm happy to have you back. And thank you so much for the blast this morning. It's great to hear from you. I feel pretty confident in my Scott Conn 3. That was pretty tame. He can get very, very fired up, and I look forward to further blasts from him and all of you here on the Jon Justice Show. The St. Cloud-based Resolute Law was retained in early April to investigate these allegations, according to a person familiar with the inquiry. The law firm did not respond to the request for comments about the status of the investigation. The St. Paul Police Department also declined to comment. Witnesses in the ongoing investigation have been instructed not to speak about the matter. I'm assuming not to text about the matter either, right? I think that would kind of be a given. Definitely don't text. Don't mention hot dogs or wieners. The allegations arose less than 6 months after Herr was elected in 2025, upsetting former Mayor Melvin Carter and becoming the first woman and Hmong person to hold office. Now, this is not the first time that the mayor, Kahuli Herr, has dealt with any allegations about her behavior. Last year, a petition for a restraining order was filed against Herr in Ramsey County District Court by a former friend who claimed that Herr had sent inappropriate sexualized questions, failed to respect her boundaries, and got her removed from the National Kidney Foundation board. The restraining order was denied by the Ramsey County District Court. Referee Elizabeth Clydesdale, who wrote that the text messages filed showed Herr had not threatened her former friend and that her husband had tried to help resolve the issue. It was not proven that Herr had played a role in the woman's removal from the National Kidney Foundation. And again, just watch the double standard play out. You're going to see very straightforward, fact-based reporting about these allegations, depending on how this whole thing shakes out, right? Because you are going to have, a both side issue here. And if for some reason there doesn't seem to be any indication of this either way, this is just initial investigations regarding these allegations. But if for some reason it ends up looking bad on the St. Paul police chief, then I would imagine the mainstream media will probably amplify the story because that's an angle that they would want to roll with. And if Cooley Herr were a Republican, this would be given an entirely different treatment by the mainstream media. But because she's aligned with the DFL, the reporting will be very straightforward, fact-based, and make no assumptions whatsoever. So we all get to sit back and watch the double standard at play. Not the only controversy surrounding St. Paul and Kahuli Herr. The St. Paul mayor, Herr, has pointed to back-to-back emergency calls at the city's 3 largest homeless encampments as rationale for clearing them next month, even as protesters and community organizers continue to urge her to reconsider. There's quite a few details in the story, but basically you have today at 2:30, you have the People's Action Coalition Against Trump. Does that spell anything out, by the way? People's Action Coalition Against Trump. They're planning a Stop the Sweeps rally. PACAT. I don't think they intended an acronym there.
I don't think so.
PACAT.
Seems kind of lazy, though.
Yeah. PACAT. That's the noise that my dog makes if I happen to step on her tail. PACAT. Oh, my gosh. They're so going to regret hiring me.
Boo.
So the People's Action Coalition Against Trump, they're planning a Stop the Sweeps rally outside the St. Paul City Hall to oppose further destabilizing 400 unhoused encampment residents. Attendees are expected to include encampment residents, shelter workers, and community leaders. PACAT, this People's Action Coalition Against Trump, they don't care about these people. It's all about bringing attention to their cause. They don't look at any of the facts of the situation. Most importantly, that here you have a leftist mayor looking to close these encampments. And if you have a leftist looking to shut down these encampments, then there's probably a really good reason why. Because a Republican probably would have done it a long time ago. Most of the individuals within these encampments, they're doing so voluntarily. They're homeless and on the streets because they want to be. Or they're drug addicts that don't want to go to the proper shelters that are there to do the good work of helping individuals who are homeless, not unhoused. That's a stupid way to go and describe it. But the majority of the individuals in these encampments are choosing to be there for their own selfish reasons. And the residents and the taxpayers, whether it's St. Paul or it's Minneapolis, do not deserve to have these dens of debauchery and squalor popping up next to their homes. And yet you got a bunch of idiots out there more than willing to go grab their stupid signs and protest, "Stop the sweeps." And they're using it to take a stab at Trump, for crying out loud. It's Kahuli her that's looking to go and close down the encampments. By the way, there's no word in the story whether or not any of these encampments had Wiener Wednesday on their own. I just wanted to point that out. The mayor shared a statement on social media Friday outlining her rationale for closing the camps, which is based on analysis conducted by multiple city departments that found them unsafe and unstable. Between early July of 25 and July of this year, first responders were dispatched to the Pig's Eye Park location on reports of 81 medical emergencies, 20 fires, 14 assaults, 11 restraining order violations or domestic assault disturbances, 9 weapons calls, 5 death investigations, and 1 sex offense, according to the mayor's office. And yet ask anybody who's involved in PACAT, the People's Action Coalition Against Trump, their thoughts on the fact that these homeless encampments are incredibly dangerous, not just for the community surrounding them, but for those in the community. Get their thoughts on it, and they'll probably just do a butt Trump on you. City and county staff are on site daily attempting to transition the encampment residents to nearby shelters and housing. The city's response is not focused on enforcement alone, according to the mayor. Coming up, Channel 5 does a fact check on the University of Minnesota Gender Dolls program. I want to touch briefly, and I'm going to attach it to this story. There was a video going around of an actress at a human rights event who was delivering this ridiculous, it was Anne Hathaway giving this human rights speech where she gives this ridiculous word salad, nonsensical diatribe on the myth relating to cisgender males, the trans community, white people. Riley Gaines put up just a fantastic response about this viral clip going around. I want to share that with you and dive into the details of not only sort of putting a bow, at least for now, on the Minnesota Gender Dolls program, but then I'm also going to share with you this article from Scott Gillespie. It was published in MinnPost and reposted in the Minneapolis Times. And what I like about this story is that, for one, I'm pretty sure the individual who wrote it is aligned with the left. Okay? So it should technically carry some weight with the Minneapolis City Council leadership. I use that term loosely. And Minneapolis Man, Baby Mayor Mom Jeans Jacob Fry relating to the bathhouse issue. It's probably going to be largely ignored, but the headline of the piece is the Minneapolis bathhouse ordinance opens the door to sexual exploitation. It's probably one of the best and most comprehensive takedowns of this dangerous lifting of the bathhouse ordinance and what these lunatic activists on the Minneapolis City Council want to do to downtown Minneapolis and opening up these dens of debauchery. I'll give you details coming up in just a moment on the Jon Justice Show, presented by American Experiment. Don't go anywhere.
If something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. We've heard over and over that wind and solar are the clean and green solution to our energy needs. Power without the downsides of fossil fuels. It sounds great on the surface, but is it true? Let's take a closer look. Every form of energy impacts the environment. Wind and solar are no exception. The only difference? You've probably never been told about their downsides. Wind and solar are both low-power energy sources that require exponentially more wind and solar farms to produce the same amount of power as nuclear or natural gas. This means greater material needs, which lead to unparalleled levels of mining, manufacturing, transportation, and construction, all of which come with huge environmental harms. The land use alone is environmentally devastating. A 1 gigawatt nuclear plant takes about 1.3 square miles. Solar, up to 75 square miles. Wind, up to 3,000 square miles. Powering the U.S. with just wind would require more land than 2 Californias. Then there's the materials. Meeting global net zero targets would require massive amounts of minerals, far more than the world currently produces. This means opening new mines, often in countries with weak environmental standards, dangerous working conditions, and even child labor. The impacts on wildlife are no better. Offshore wind disrupts marine ecosystems. Whales, for example, which rely on echolocation, suffer from hearing impairment and disturbed migration patterns. On land, turbines kill birds and bats, and solar farms destroy habitats. Then there's lifespan. Nuclear and natural gas plants can last 60 to 80 years. Turbines and solar panels, just 20 to 25. They're also not easily recyclable. So multiply the sheer number of units we'd need with their short lifespan, and you have millions of tons of material waste heading for landfills. The truth is, wind and solar aren't the magical solution we've been promised. The costs are real, the trade-offs significant. Low power, high material needs, extensive land use and ecosystem impact. Wind and solar energy production literally do more environmental harm than good. Like we said, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Learn more at americanexperiment.org/shatteredgreendreams.
And remember, at the website, you can not only listen to the show, but make a donation, and you can get a Jon Justice Show hat. We have more merchandise that will be available very, very soon on the website at americanexperiment.org. And thank you so much for joining the show this morning. You can listen and watch live on X. Just head on over to the @MN Think Tank profile on X, and you can watch and listen there. Of course, we're on the MixLR app. Download the app. It's completely free. The podcasts of every show are available there. And we're streaming live on Facebook and YouTube on the Center of the American Experiment and my personal pages as well. The email is jon.justice@americanexperiment.org. And if you want to leave us a comment at any point throughout the show, we call them blasts. Leave us a blast at 612-584-4565. Again, 612-584-4565 if you want to take part in the blaster line. Let's go and hear from another friend of the show.
Hey, good morning, John. My thoughts on this homeless encampment clean-out early August. It's a free state fair housekeeping issue. They don't want all the out-state voters to come into St. Paul and see homeless laying all over the place and know that Democrats are running St. Paul. It's just optics. My opinion. Have a great one.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. That could be a part of it. That being said, there's no denying what's been taking place and how dangerous these homeless encampments have become. And the leadership in the Twin Cities only has themselves to blame for allowing these to take place at all. They should never, the moment one of these homeless encampments pop up, there shouldn't be any question. You're breaking the law. You're breaking city ordinances. They should come in and be dismantled immediately. Immediately. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen. And a lot of people get injured. A lot of people's habits are perpetuated. Assaults occur. People die. And sadly, it takes that level of crime to take place and horrific news stories to get Democrat leadership to go and respond to any of this. Let's go back to the blaster line here on the Jon Justice Show.
Good morning, John. Al the trucker here in Ogallala, Nebraska. Hey, I meal prep for all of my trips out on the road, and last night I never would have imagined that while I was listening to a bit of a replay from yesterday's show that my chili dog would be so oddly prophetic. You have a good show.
Great to hear from you, Al. I know Al was very concerned about where he could go and listen to the show. So I'm glad that he's found it, and we appreciate the added content. University of Minnesota program involving transgender therapy for children is under intense national scrutiny. Channel 5, fact check on the University of Minnesota gender dolls program. Conservative outlets say the children as young as 4 will be given the dolls as part of the program and that Governor Tim Walz helped to drive the effort. That's right. Here's what they say, though. Here's what's true and what's not and what we found. We do know that in the spring of 2023, the project run by Diane Berg and G. Nick Ryder won an Early Innovation Fund grant. According to the university's website, those are grants of up to $10,000 available to short-term projects at the university that advance early-stage innovations. The paper dolls are built to help children tell their stories and see themselves represented and are designed for clinicians and educators who show up for these kids every single day. They're dolls, they're cartoon character dolls of children where you can swap genitalia. It's child abuse. It's borderline, if not straightforward pedophilia to go and peddle this to any kid. I mentioned this when we first talked about it. If you're a man on the street and you see a child and you were to go and hand them this material, you probably would get arrested. And yet somehow this type of ridiculous and dangerous ideology, guised as education, ends up seeping in to our public education system, our university education system, and nobody looks at it in a real world lens anymore. It's funny. I have a story. I ended up moving it to the bottom of the stack, but there's a new set of laws that start here in Minnesota on August 1st. We covered a bit of this last week on Friday during the Dry Run Freedom Friday show, and there were a couple of laws that we didn't cover on the show. Elon Musk is suing the state of Minnesota over the anti-nudification app law. Basically, the argument from Elon is that it's overly restrictive and the AI Grok on X already handles making sure that you cannot go and create nude material, nude content, and nude AIs of individuals. It's already, the private sector has already built in safeguards to keep this from happening, and that this law would go and stifle innovation relating to artificial intelligence and what you can and can't create. In the story, Governor Tim Walz calls Elon Musk a creep for pushing back on the legislation. It's pretty rich that Governor Tim Walz would call anybody a creep. I mean, here's a dude that allows the murdering of babies. We have some of the most, if not the most extreme abortion policies available here in Minnesota. An individual who signed off on allowing underage children to be mutilated via the hands of healthcare providers in these dangerous transgender surgeries, has been an advocate for this dangerous sexually explicit material in schools, and he has the nerve to call Elon Musk a creep. Now, getting back to the fact check on the gender dolls. Will these paper dolls be in your child's school? Not from what we learned. And again, we knew all of this. I mean, Channel 5's a little late to the party here, but 5 Eyewitness News did call 19 of the largest school districts in 7 counties that make up the Twin Cities Metro. 8 got back to us. 7 out of 8 had never heard of the My Gender Dolls project, and none planned to use it. They also reached out to the Minnesota Department of Education, which said this project, this isn't a project sent us back to the university, which said this isn't its project, and they sent them back to the university. My apologies, I got my words fumbled there. The researchers Ryder and Berg responded by email saying, we would like to respond to address the mis and disinformation about the My Gender Dolls. The My Gender Dolls will not be in public schools this year. My Gender Dolls are a therapeutic tool, according to the fact check from Channel 5, used by licensed professionals. All licensed professionals will undergo a required training before being able to use the My Gender Dolls in their therapeutic practice. There is no set launch date to determine at this time. So I played this clip earlier. Let me play it again. This is a Florida gubernatorial candidate, David Jolly, giving his opinion of bills to ban gender reassignment surgery and techniques for underage minors.
And as a family, we embraced it. We saw it. the right pathways, the medical pathways, the gender-affirming care for this grandchild. And this was when Tallahassee was wrestling with this really, draconian legislation during a special session called about insurance, I think, led them to this other issue. And he said, look, if this legislation passes, the doctor will be arrested for continuing to care for my grandchild. The parents could lose their child. Their child could be removed from their home.
Draconian laws, he calls it. It's child abuse. Anybody who is actually using their brain appropriately, that hasn't been brainwashed by the left or isn't fully agenda-driven, knows that this is child abuse. And yet he's calling it draconian. No, draconian is what I just mentioned a moment ago. Actually training licensed professionals on how to expose children to sexually explicit material under the guise of healthcare. That's draconian. That's the stuff of 1984. Will the dolls be given to children as young as 4? The website says the dolls are a first-of-their-kind therapeutic play approach designed for gender-diverse children ages 4 to 10. Finally, they reached out to the governor's office, which told Channel 5 in a text to the governor that Walz has no connection to the program and it's not being implemented by the state. So again, everything that we kind of already knew about the story here, very straightforward, no opinion. For the sake of argument, you and I both know it's true. If this had been a Republican governor, this wouldn't happen, but just live in the fantasy for just a moment. If this had been a Republican governor that was proposing this and it was garnering controversy, there would be an abundance of quotes from individuals over their views of what was being discussed. How does this person feel about the gender dolls that apparently are not being implemented, but some say are being supported by the governor? How does this person feel? But because it's Governor Dim Walz and the DFL, you just get a very straightforward story. And this is the way the media always should be, but they're not. And the real story here, by the way, is the tax dollars going to fund this dangerous genital swapping doll program, right? And does Walz actually support what these two radical leftist individuals are attempting to go and create? If this were to be placed in schools, would Governor Dim Walz be supportive of it? That's the question. But of course, because it's Governor Dim Walz, you're not going to see local media go and ask him that question. All right, keeping with the theme. Originally posted in MinnPost, reposted at the Minneapolis Times. I've talked extensively. Catherine and Grace on the American Experiment podcast have talked extensively about the repeal of the bathhouse ordinance in Minneapolis. These dens of debauchery. Okay, being labeled as a healthcare initiative. I mean, you and I both know that's utterly ridiculous. What I love about this piece is that this is coming from an individual who has experience and knows the dangers of what these types of bathhouses would create in the city of Minneapolis. So I want to share with you a majority of this because I feel like I know it's incredibly important. Because when we push back on these issues, you want to be able to arm yourself with the truth, and you want to have as much knowledge as you can to provide with authority the arguments against this. Now, on its face, when it comes to the bathhouse issue, I think that the arguments are already right there in front of you. Right? There's no need for any of these. They're only going to go and invite harm, exploitation of individuals. There's no need to have to go and give out the necessary healthcare information to people because they can't get it. If people want to go and engage in this type of activity, they can, just like they have for decades since the ban went in place. They can do it in the comfort of their own home. To make a public space is only inviting disaster, and it's spreading the wrong message to anybody who wants to come to Minneapolis and spend money. And certainly, as we look to have the city of Minneapolis sort of get out from under all of this negativity that's been created by the radical leftists on the Minneapolis City Council. It's time for us to wake up and stop the city council and Mayor Fry from allowing this multi-billion-dollar sex industry to turn Minneapolis into a sanctuary city for sexual exploiters. On June 28th, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry signed an ordinance passed by the city council on a 9-2 vote to repeal the adult bathhouse ban. The advocates and elected officials pushing for legalized adult sex venues are framing this ordinance as a supportive of LGBTQ plus rights and gay men's health. But this is not an issue, writes the author, of either protecting the community's health nor the human rights of queer people. Quite the opposite. Remembering Minneapolis in the 1980s brings me both smiles and head-scratching memories of what the city looked like then. Hennepin Avenue was not the vibrant theater district and the great downtown dining spot it is today. It was pretty gritty and sordid, hosting the likes of Moby Dick's, Gay 90s, The Saloon, Roaring 20s, Empress XXX Theater, adult bookstores, and several strip clubs. It was also known as one of the big hoe strolls, doing that thing with my fingers and not on my bingo card for today's show, with rampant prostitution on the street and a commercial sex establishments. Why would our mayor want to reopen these corridors for sexual exploitation? Well, the mayor's an idiot, for one, whether or not he's aware of what the actual agenda of the radical leftists on the Minneapolis City Council remains to be seen. But make no mistake, this is what the Minneapolis City Council wants. Everything that was just described of what Hennepin Avenue used to look like. Because these are godless heathens that want the world around them to justify their own moral depravity based solely off their own base desires and emotions. To bring about, I mentioned this when we first talked about the show, you might as well just go ahead and open up a red light district. They want affirmation of their own illicit behavior. And they want society to go and agree with them. This benefits their agenda. Because when you're dealing with that God-sized hole in your life, you got to fill it with something. And these individuals have filled it with selfish moral depravity. And they want to basically establish this as a cultural norm, that they can act and do whatever they want, and everybody around us who still respects those societal norms that makes this country great, you're all just going to have to go and deal with it. Legal venues for public sex, the author goes on to say, are where prostitution occurs. I should know. As a survivor with lived experience, I am fortunate that I am not in the life anymore. Many of us who survived on the streets and became leaders in the community understand the connections and trajectory of what this ordinance means for Minneapolis. What rules the game is demand for sexual acts, whether in the trap house, at a hotel, in the brothel, in escort services, or in the backseat of a car. Sex buyers drive the business, exploitation, sexual harassment, and rape. With news of the signed ordinance reached us, a friend reminded me of how much her pimp loved the bathhouses in downtown Minneapolis when the brothels were in full swing in the 1980s. I was going to save this for the end of the article, but let me go ahead and present it here. You know, will this rational, credible, and passionate concern and plea be heard by any of the individuals on the Minneapolis City Council, or will they just simply go and ignore it? I think you will know the answer. When news of the signed ordinance reached us, although, I shared that part already. Although women rarely frequented bathhouses, they go on to write, our traffickers' business doubled as patrons leaving the bathhouses would then call to buy their girls. Promoters of the ordinance claim that this was discriminatory against the LGBTQ people and will support public health. But the research shows that adult sex venues are not safe spaces, particularly in this instance for queer youth looking to explore their sexuality. In fact, research shows that queer youth are twice as likely to be sex trafficked than their peers. Other supporters reassured the public that the majority of individuals involved here are consenting adults, as if those who are purchased for sex have the agency, choice, and desire equal to that of their buyers. The notion of consent is meaningless or non-existent in exchange where one party holds all the financial, social, and typically physical power, and the other holds onto coercive thread for survival. The truth is that money can never buy consent, they write. The other narrative we often hear is that of harm reduction, giving the false impression that the city would tame the sex trade and guarantee less violence, less organized crime, and less risks of adverse health outcomes to the people in prostitution. And again, for those that may be just joining us, this is an editorial. It's written by Terry for Liddy, a survivor of sexual exploitation. Minneapolis bathhouse ordinance opens the door to sexual exploitation. This is at best wishful thinking and at worst insanity, that this would tame the sex trade, guarantee less violence, less organized crime, and less risks of adverse health outcomes in prostitution. Every jurisdiction in the world that has legalized or decriminalized the commercial sex industry, from counties in Nevada to New Zealand, Germany, and the Netherlands, have tried and failed to improve the lives of prostituted people. Boy, it sounds a lot like socialism, doesn't it? The question is not whether individuals have a right to earn money, however they choose, but whether the city of Minneapolis will offer vulnerable people access to real economic opportunities rather than a green light the right of men to exploit their vulnerability for sexual gratification. Minnesota was proud to be one of the first states to implement Safe Harbor, which ended the criminalization of sex-trafficked youth and provided them services. So true sadness kicks in as our mayor and city council want to move us backwards. Over the past 2 decades, I have personally worked with hundreds of women, girls, and boys who were sexually exploited, trafficked, assaulted locally, nationally, and internationally. The majority of my friends, primarily black and brown, who shared Minneapolis streets and brothels with me, are deceased. Several of my native sisters died violent deaths, which often included murder by sex buyers. The trauma runs so deep that we now witness second and third generations of familial prostitution and sex trafficking. One commonality binds them: the physiological and psychological, emotional and spiritual harm that prostitution inflicts feels the same from one end of the world to the other, exposing vulnerable boys, young men, and queer youth to these unspeakable harms with no exit will make our city complicit in sexual orientation and exploitation, sexual exploitation. Unless the brave people of Minneapolis prevent the city council from taking the next steps necessary to open brothels and other sex establishments, we will create a renewed pathway of suffering for the most marginalized among us. It's time for us to wake up and stop the city council and Mayor Fry from allowing this multi-billion-dollar sex industry to turn Minneapolis into a sanctuary city for sexual exploiters. Our response to legalize brothels must be to create a safe and healthy Minneapolis free from sexual exploitation, that we can all thrive free from violence and discrimination. At the end of the piece, it says, Terry works to offer hope, encouragement, and empowerment through her testimony and direct services to those who have experienced the sex trade. And again, I ask the question, in the wake of political expediency and opportunism of the individuals that push forward on this, under all of these false arguments that were just absolutely decimated in this piece, her voice is probably going to go unheard, probably going to be ignored. And it's tragic. It's absolutely tragic. And again, those that passed lifting the ban, these are just godless, degenerate heathens with only their base selfish desires guiding their decision making. And it'll be to the detriment of Minneapolis were they to move forward on this. And you know that they know the truth too, because when the arguments were being put forward in favor of this at the time, one of the arguments that I heard over and over again was the fact that they would say, well, just so you know, we're a long way off from opening any of these bathhouses. It would be quite a long time until we actually see one. So this is just a first step. There's no need to be concerned about it now. Well, why should anybody be concerned at all if they're so great? Why are you going to wait? Because it's a slow burn. Because they want people to get accustomed to the idea so that voices like this are more easily silenced when people step forward. You know, and going back to the gender dolls for just a moment here on the show. You know, they call it grooming for a reason. Why do you think they work at such an early age to get at our most vulnerable? To impress upon them issues of sexuality at an age when they're not ready to handle it, and it can cause detrimental physical and psychological harm because it makes individuals more willing to accept policies like this, while the adults that are passing these ordinances attempt to go and justify their own base, selfish, and godless desires. It is the slippery slope right there in front of you for everybody to see. And hat tip to this woman for stepping up and speaking out against this. Unfortunately, I fear, as I mentioned, that more than likely her words of caution are going to go completely unheard and will ultimately be ignored. All right, coming up next hour, a Wisconsin brewery that offered free beer when Trump dies says alcohol permit revoked. Oh, no. That's so sad. Speaking of what's been happening in our schools, however, at AmericanExperiment.org, Grace Keating has put out a series of videos, commentary of what is coming to the classroom. In case you've missed any of it, I wanted to share with you one of the most recent coming to the classroom pieces that are available up at AmericanExperiment.org.
In this week's episode of Coming to a Classroom Near You, we look at the new requirement to teach ethnic studies in all K-12 schools in Minnesota, which must be implemented in 2026. Ethnic studies includes 3 distinct standards: identity, resistance, and ways of knowing and methodologies. The resistance standard takes learning to a whole new level. It requires students to describe how individuals and communities have fought for liberation against systemic exercises of power and organize with others to engage in such activities. The Ways of Knowing standard requires students to understand the roots of contemporary systems of oppression and apply lessons from the past that could eliminate contemporary injustices. High school students are instructed that resistance to our nation's social and political institutions is required, as they explain how the social construction of race was used to oppress people of color, evaluate policies affecting historically marginalized communities of color, and take action to affect policy. It's not ambiguous. The new ethnic studies standards don't just require learning. They require students to organize, to take action, and it's already playing out in classrooms near you. Teachers in schools across Minnesota are encouraging their students to organize using this resistance standard. For example, the principal at Eagle Ridge Middle School in Savage, Minnesota, sent a message to families saying he will not stop kids from leaving school to protest, and will have staff supervising the protest. But don't blame the principal. He's simply implementing the new ethnic studies standards. More concerning is that the activists now exhorting students to join protests are the very people who helped draft the ethnic studies standards in the first place. Far-left activist groups like Unidos MN are organizing Minneapolis high school students to protest. Unidos has also been promoting a 25-page guidebook calling on students to engage monthly in mass non-cooperation to halt the authoritarians' advance. Unidos is a prominent member of the Minnesota Ethnic Studies Coalition, and Jose Alvalar, the statewide director of youth programs for Unidos, formerly called Navigate Minnesota, served on the Minnesota Department of Education committee that wrote our social studies standards. The resistance is all happening according to plan, and it's officially coming to all Minnesota public schools this fall. When ethnic studies was presented to the Minnesota legislature in 2023, it was portrayed as the study of different cultures, students seeing themselves in the curriculum, and learning honest history. But like so many other familiar terms, Minnesota's ethnic studies has been hijacked to apply a liberated approach to understanding our world. Minnesota students deserve a robust education that includes learning hard historical truths and frank discussions on where our country has fallen short, not one that is confined to a narrow, politicized, and ideological worldview. Recently, California rejected a statewide ethnic studies mandate because it was too divisive. How will Minnesota respond? To learn more about Minnesota's ethnic studies standards, visit americanexperiment.org/ethnic studies.
And I would encourage you to head on over to americanexperiment.org and check out that entire series. We will be playing more clips from the content available up at the website at americanexperiment.org. So again, I encourage you to go and check those out. Ryan Wilson, Lieutenant Governor candidate with Lisa Dameth, will be joining us in just a few minutes here on the show. I want to go here just briefly, and I'll provide more details coming up after my conversation with Ryan Wilson. However, the Wisconsin Department of Revenue has revoked the alcohol permit for the Minocqua Brewing Company, citing violations of transporting beer from Illinois without permits or taxes. The brewery's owner, Kirk Bangstad, who we've talked about quite a bit on the show before, plans to fight the decision, arguing that the violations don't warrant shutting down his business. The brewery, known for its anti-Trump stance, previously faced a backlash for a social media post offering up free beer upon Trump's death. So while the revocation of his alcohol permit did not have anything to do necessarily with the fact that this individual had put forward some pretty deplorable commentary relating to President Donald Trump. Needless to say, not sad that this guy got his license revoked. I'll give you further details about this story again coming up next hour. I have some audio to share regarding also the freak out that currently dominates the Democrat Party. Some of that happening right here in Minnesota as well. When you look at the controversies relating to the Lisa Dameth campaign, and also what's been going on with Angie Craig. There's a lot of dysfunction that's been taking place as well. But it requires that, us Republicans here in Minnesota, we also make sure that we get our act together and we coalesce behind those candidates who end up getting the nomination once we get past the primary. I love to see the infighting of the DFL, but make no mistake, we got to make sure that we get our own issues hammered out so that we can take advantage of that panic that's taking place on the left right now. Here to talk a little bit about that and so much more, I'm very pleased to welcome to the Jon Justice Show, presented by American Experiment, as we head into Hour 3, Lieutenant Governor candidate on the Lisa Dameth campaign. And you know what, Ryan Wilson, I'll call you a friend of the show. Good morning, Ryan Wilson, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be on. I think the first time I came on was early 22 when I was running for auditor, back before people even knew we had an auditor. It's gotten a little more important since then. And thank you for having me on over the years. It's just been great being able to talk the state of affairs with you.
What's the current state of your guys of your campaign? I think we might have talked post convention. Of course, there was a lot of controversy that came out of that, and unfortunately, I think some of that controversy continues to cycle in the background based on the wake of what had happened at that convention. But what's the current state of your campaign so far, especially in the wake of those controversies out of the convention, Ryan Wilson?
Yeah, the campaign's going great. Lisa and I are traveling the state, and the best way to see that is if you follow her on the Twitter or the Facebook, you'll see that we're up and down, left and right, all over. Taking the time to meet with folks and hear. Just the other day, we're up in Pine County talking to some farmers about the challenges that they see, and I think the campaign is going great. Campaign finance reports just came out the other day. Continue to lead the pack in cash on hand and other important metrics, which is important for getting the message out. I mean, that's at the end of the day. We need a candidate, and Lisa really is that only candidate that can take it to Amy Klobuchar. We have to be able to stop Amy, or everything else is for naught if we don't turn the state around.
Since you mentioned it, let me go ahead and go here. Matt Dean here at Center of the American Experiment. He has a piece out this morning. I'll share with you the AI overlord summary. But the headline for Matt Dean's piece, as we talk with Lieutenant Governor candidate Ryan Wilson, Klobuchar's health plan rewrites history. Senator Amy Klobuchar's health care plan for Minnesota governor highlights her efforts to lower costs and protect the medical device industry. However, her support for the Affordable Care Act, the ACA, in 2009, which included a medical device excise tax and led to significant premium increases in Minnesota, contradicts this narrative. Despite her later opposition to the tax and efforts to repeal it, the ACA's impact on Minnesota's healthcare system remains a point of contention. I encourage everybody to go and check out the entirety of its piece. Matt Dean gets into quite a bit of detail, but Amy Klobuchar earlier this week came out and was touting what she wants to do regarding fraud and her health plans. But with what Matt Dean lays out here, at least my takeaway, Ryan, is that she can't be trusted. We've seen her go back and forth on these votes that have had major dramatic negative impacts on Minnesota as she tries to sort of cast herself in a somewhat new light on the campaign trail. Your thoughts on this and Amy Klobuchar's healthcare plans, and certainly what she's voted on in the past?
Oh, sorry. Here, can you see me? No,
Yeah.
100%. And I was in the medical device industry for years. The company I started supported the medical device industry, and that tax was a huge deal. And it hurt existing businesses. It kept new businesses from coming to Minnesota. And of course, Amy was, I believe, the 60th vote. I think they needed every vote to pass that. And without her, had she stood up for Minnesota, that wouldn't have passed. And so this gets back to, we see this time and again with her policies where she says, "Don't look at what I did, don't look at my record. Just listen to what I'm going to say. Don't believe your lying eyes," as they say. And it's the other day, Amy Klobuchar was saying, "I'm going to fight fraud, right? I'm going to stand up. I'm going to be loud on fraud. I'm going to be doing, all these things in her fraud plan." Then you look at what she's done over the last, decade while this fraud's been happening. When these federal dollars are being stolen, she did nothing. She sat there. At best, she continued to pass these budgets and these bills and extend the same program that was feeding our future folks. And so, again, it's pretty rich to say that now you're going to, change your stripes on whether it be healthcare, or medical device, or fraud, or immigration, as she voted, for every open border bill that Joe Biden wanted. But now, now she's going to be tough on crime. And so again, you got to look at what she's done, not what she says she's going to do. She says she's going to cut taxes or not raise taxes, but she voted to raise taxes. What was it, just last year when one of the largest tax cuts was set to expire in 2025. She held it up. Thank goodness it passed, through reconciliation, and those tax cuts got extended on the middle class, on our small businesses. But Amy, she cannot be trusted because, again, you look at her record and you compare that to what she's saying, the two things just don't line up.
I was talking with a radio station. I think it's up in your neck of the woods. I think you're up in northern Minnesota right now, aren't you? Aren't you, Ryan
Correct,
Wilson?
yes.
If I'm not mistaken,
Yep.
Yeah. So I was talking with a radio station that serves the Rocks and Cows up there yesterday, and the host made an interesting comment. From their perspective, they felt like Amy was starting to lean into, more so than what they'd seen before, what you've typically seen from the radical wing of the Democrat Party, wherein she sort of has taken this somewhat, my dear friend Drew had coined the phrase that Amy Klobuchar was a senator of small things, but that it was his impression that she'd been leaning in more towards those radical left policies. And I'm curious if you've been seeing the same thing from her commentary out with her limited time on the campaign trail, because she doesn't pop up very often. But have you seen that from Amy too? Her sort of leaning into that radical left-wing part of the Democrat Party right now?
Not on the campaign trail, but I think she's always been there. Let me give you a couple more examples. So,
Sure.
there was a bill in Congress to stop boys from competing in girls' sports. She voted against it, right? That is something that 80% of Minnesotans would want to see be able to happen here. She's led very few bills. She's usually on the back bench, as they say. And every now and then she'll try to put her name on something and lead a charge. Well, one of the charges she tried to lead, and thankfully it wasn't successful, was to a bill that would have in effect banned voter ID across the country. I think at that time it was 20 some states that had it. And this was one of the key points of her bill. And so again, that's another 80-20 issue. And we just saw a bunch of polling this last week on it. That is a radical idea. And again, all the open border stuff, the free healthcare for illegals, these are the kinds of things that she wants. So she's always been there. She's just tried to package it in a way that and hide it really from Minnesotans. And and hasn't faced a lot of scrutiny over the years. And she's going to get, when this primary gets wrapped up here, and Lisa's able to kind of take it to her one-on-one, I think she's going to have her first real challenger since she's been elected.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, talking with Ryan Wilson, Lieutenant Governor candidate on Lisa Damas' campaign, can you kind of contrast Lisa compared to what you just mentioned? I mean, as you're going through the list, I'm thinking in my mind, well, I'm fairly confident that Lisa's pretty much against everything that you were just talking about regarding Amy Klobuchar. But I'm just curious to get your perspective as you go to reach voters, and not just Republican voters, but also those open-minded, and there are still some out there, those open-minded Democrat voters that may not be thrilled about Amy Klobuchar, but may want to vote for her as a default. Compare and contrast the two candidates in your mind. I know you're biased. That being said, I am curious your thoughts, though.
Well, let's take economic plans, right? Lisa wants to make sure that small businesses, that families keep more of their hard-earned money. And that's the fraud, right? Making sure that it doesn't get stolen, but also just from tax reform, regulatory reform, permitting reform, red tape reform. Those are all things that Lisa has fought for, some of which, even though she only had a tie, were able to pass. And so you can look at her record and see what she's been advocating for. Again, Amy's going to run on some of those things, but what you see her actual record is there's never been a regulation that she hasn't liked. You brought up ACA, the Affordable Care Act. And someone said to me the other day, Ryan, everything the government touches and tries to make more affordable gets way more expensive. And the things that they don't, take like flat screen TVs, they come crashing down in price. And so we need to get the government just stop touching things, stop doing things. And so, and like we said, boys and girls sports, open borders versus closed borders. Lisa, I think, did a masterful job navigating some of the challenges we had here over the immigration policy at the beginning of the year, right? Met with Vice President Vance when he came in and really laid out a framework for if Minnesota is cooperating with the federal government the way that states like Michigan do, which, Governor Whitmer isn't exactly, a far right governor. And so they didn't see the kind of things that we had here. Instead, what you have is Amy Klobuchar showing up at No Kings rallies, I believe, right? And so you just Minnesotans will see just a return to normalcy, a return to kind of common sense, taking down the temperature, just kind of bringing it back to the Minnesota that we know that's great. We like things like our parks and our lakes and our schools and things that we want to invest in, right? We don't want to be a society that leaves people in need without that helping hand. I mean, that's the nature of Minnesota. Yeah. But there's a way you can do it responsibly, and a way that you can do it to balance kind of the needs of everybody and make sure that, again, you're not stealing from folks. I think when you look at that, it's really at every single issue. Go back to the election integrity stuff on the voter ID. People want that. People want they have no issue walking in and showing their license to somebody to be able to vote, because that's how much their vote matters to them. They want to make sure that it's protected. And you got Amy, again, leading the charge on bills that don't. And immigration, Amy's voting for every open border policy that Joe Biden advanced to her. And so it's going to be a nice contrast come this fall. And I think Minnesotans will be able to look. I just want kind of someone that's been here, that's been in Minnesota, that hasn't been in DC for the last 20 years, that knows the issues that we have.
You have the ability to reach out to the show at any time and leave a comment. We call it our blaster line. Leave us a blast at 612-584-4565. We're talking with Ryan Wilson, Lieutenant Governor candidate, with Lisa Damas. We have a blast that's rolled in from Curtis on the topic of Amy Klobuchar. Let's go ahead and hear from him.
Yeah, every time somebody is able to ask Amy questions in an open forum, I should ask her why she wasn't at the fraud hearing in D.C. None of the Democrats were, but why wasn't she there?
Well, I know that Ryan Wilson, Amy, there was a piece on Amy Klobuchar. She held a press conference recently talking about, she was going to be the one to go and tackle fraud. It's tragic that our mainstream media here in Minnesota doesn't take the next step in asking the very legitimate question of how does she feel about Governor Tim Walz and the fraud that has occurred under him and current Attorney General Keith Ellison. But what are your thoughts on what Amy Klobuchar has said about her desire to go and tackle fraud?
So this is another great example of, almost everything that Amy does is going to be poll tested, workshopped, how is this going to play out? And that's why you can't see Amy ever respond to something in real time. And it's not, let's see how many debates that she's willing to do. And it'll be interesting. I think we have an upcoming debate with her and all the candidates in Farm Fest. So that'll be good, or forum, or whatever you want to call it. But no, on this fraud stuff, we rolled out our fraud plan in I think November, early December. As soon as we got in, it's a 5-point plan, and talks about how we're going to tackle fraud. What my role as lieutenant governor is going to be in making sure that fraud gets rooted out across agencies. The parts of that included things like the Office of Inspector General bill, making sure that gets through, or modernizing IT systems in our across our counties where a lot of these verifications are happening. Right, and so that was part of our plan in December. I call it December. Then Amy rolls out her plan in I think February or whatever. It was a couple of months after she announced getting in, and had a lot of those same elements, right? And so it took her a while to get it out there. Had a lot of the things that were in Lisa and I's plan. Had some other things in there, but if you look at who's actually willing to put kind of their feet forward and get her done, Lisa passed multiple elements of her plan, were able to get it passed as Speaker of the House, used her already position of leadership to be able to fight fraud with nothing more than a tie. And so even though Democrats blocked it for a year, that Office of Inspector General bill got passed. Additional money to modernize those IT systems got passed. So Lisa's already delivering on the things that she says she's going to do. If you look at the things, other things in Amy's plan, things like I'm going to audit, the entire government top to bottom. We'll call on Governor Walz to do it today. A lot of the things in her plan, she could call on her party, her governor that she emphatically endorsed to do today. But she's not, because it's all just packaging. It's all just for show. And we all know that the status quo is what's going to happen. We're going to get a Walz third term, and Amy Klobuchar is going to be just like it was before. Because if she really believed in it, she would do what Lisa did. Lisa's already delivering on her plan. Amy could deliver on her plan, and she's not.
Let's talk a little bit about the primary. We talked about the controversy that came out of the GOP convention. That being said, recently you had President Donald Trump. He tossed his endorsement out for gubernatorial candidate Mike Lindell. Shortly after that, Mike Lindell made quite a few waves with his pathway to non-voting citizenship amnesty plan. I know that his camp has tried to frame this as not being an amnesty plan, although Mike Lindell has been on record saying people can call it whatever they want to call it. But your response, Ryan Wilson, as lieutenant governor candidate on Lisa Damas' campaign, your response to this proposal that Mike Lindell's campaign has put out regarding those who've come to our country illegally.
Yeah, we're really surprised by it. It undoes a lot of the work that has already been fought for here by Republicans in Minnesota. And again, Republicans haven't held a lot of cards over the last decade, in the House. I think this is the first time Lisa has ever been called in power. She's in the tie, right? And so, but with that, was able to leverage important wins like repealing free healthcare for illegal immigrants. I should call it free, taxpayer paid for healthcare, free to them for illegal immigrants. And what that does is that turns off one of the many magnets that were created by the Democrats to draw illegal immigrants to this state. With that comes, additional crime in addition to being here illegally. With that comes, burden on our already overburdened resources here, and the people that have been paying in. Minnesota benefits should be for Minnesotans, and so we've made a little bit of progress again with the little bit of power that Republicans have had, and granting this kind of amnesty would undo all of that. And not only that, but it would make us a super magnet for the country. If we're the state that, over a 6-month period, you can get kind of this get out of jail free card from, the Lindell amnesty plan, everybody from across the country is going to come and try to get that. And so it is probably one of the worst policies that has ever been proposed by a Republican in any primary race, right, or any race ever. And not to mention that it's how it would work, that it doesn't quite make any sense. But again, even the idea of it, the fact that it's being fleshed out or floated out there, and I see it goes back and forth between being a Minnesota plan and a national, being referred to as a national plan. That makes it even worse. So this is a plan that was going to be advocated for the entire country, and so I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. I think we're on day 7 of it trying to be explained away by the Lindell camp, and what we keep seeing is not not just saying I was wrong or pulling it back, but trying to double down on it and explain it. I would triple down on it. And I just, I don't get it. It's not, you will not see any kind of amnesty plan out of the Dameth campaign. It's not in our repertoire.
Well, let me let's wrap on this, and I'm going to give you. I'm going to let Ryan Wilson. I'm going to let you choose your own adventure. Okay. So it's choose your own adventure, Lieutenant Governor candidate Ryan Wilson. There's a series of data points that AmericanExperiment.org has recently put out. These are available at the website at AmericanExperiment.org, but basically going and showing the challenges that we're faced with here in Minnesota on an almost daily basis. I mean, first off, you have the fact that over 68% of the individuals polled to say that we're on the wrong track. Let me run through these bullet points here, and I'll just let you. I want you to choose which one that you want to address specifically in our conversation, and we can do this again the next time that you're on. So choose your own adventure. Choose one of these wrong track items and let us know your thoughts on it. So we have kids in Mississippi can read better than kids in Minnesota. Minnesota is now a below average state economically. These are all fact-based. There's no refuting any of these. 55% of students can't do math at a grade level. Minnesota taxes to small businesses more than any other state. And Minnesota's government let fraudsters steal over $9 billion. So choose your own adventure, Ryan Wilson. Which one of those items showing that we're on the wrong track would you like to address?
Let's wrap on fraud. How about that?
Okay.
I think people work really, really hard for the money they take home. And a lot of that money ends up going to the government. Supposed to go to the government to do things like our schools so our kids can read, right? They can learn math and science so that, we shouldn't be collecting money that we don't need for our business. All those things you talked about kind of starts with that fraud. We're overtaxing our hardworking Minnesotans here, our hardworking families. And that money didn't need to be taxed in the first place because it was going to, buy, I don't know, what was it, condos in Kenya or different things, in other parts of the world. That's wrong. That's the Democrats like to talk a lot about injustice. That's an injustice. That is stealing time from people away from their family. Every extra hour that somebody has to work, that money goes to fraudsters instead of what it was supposed to. That's money that could have been at a baseball game. That could have been helping, raise a newborn. That could have been taking care of a grandparent. But instead, people had to work those extra hours to put extra money in their own family's pockets above and beyond what the government has taken from them so that they can live their lives. And so it starts with eliminating the fraud, getting any money we can get back. A lot of that money is already, left the country, but any money we can get, we should get back, making sure that people are prosecuted, held accountable, and that can't keep taking from the government. You defraud the government, you should be disqualified from ever being able to work in a program again, or even be able to get benefits from a program again. If you're a fraudster, you're done. You want to go to another state and get their benefits? I guess that's up to that state, but you're not going to be getting them from Minnesota. We cannot let ourselves be taken advantage of anymore. People are angry about this. When I travel the state, it's the first thing that comes up. I think of a gentleman that came up to me once and said he's single.
That's going to be a question that I had for you was what are you hearing the most from people? And I think you're answering it.
Yeah, single dad, couple kids, and says, he was angry and said, I work really hard and we don't make a lot of money, aren't able to set aside a lot of money. And I got to send my kids to daycare, down the street. And he was saying, and he says, it's expensive. I got 3 kids there, including a little one. And to find out that, I got to work about, a week and a half to be able to afford daycare, and then the rest of the month is for other stuff. He said, but to find out that my other money is going to pay other people's daycares. It's not even going to help their other people's kids going to daycares. It's being stolen by fraudsters who are buying things like Lamborghinis and houses and living the high life. He said, what am I doing here? Why am I working so hard and, barely getting by so that other people can cheat the system? And so hearing that kind of story, that should make us all want to care about stopping the fraud. And the fact that, Governor Walz and the Democrats and Amy Klobuchar have let it happen and haven't spoken up and haven't been angry, that's an injustice against Minnesota families and everyday Minnesotans and people that work hard. And, we see a lot of this kind of faux compassion from Governor Walz and the Democrats. But what about the compassion for the gentleman I just described to you and for the family that's struggling to get by and that's overtaxed and own daycare is super expensive while they're paying for daycare fraudsters to steal this money? And so I think that is going to be the central issue of this election, is contrasting who really cares about Minnesotans, how their families work, how their families operate, how their families are able to save and live their lives between these two candidates, Amy and Lisa.
Ryan Wilson, again, Lieutenant Governor candidate on the Lisa Damuth campaign. Where would you like people to go to find out more about the campaign right now, Ryan?
Go to lisa4mn.com and follow us on all socials, Twitter, Facebook. It's a great way to stay in touch with Lisa, any new policies and things that we're rolling out.
Thank you so much for the time this morning. It's always great to speak with you, and I look forward to the next time you and I have a chance to chat. Have fun next week at Farm Fest. I know American Experiment will be up there, so be sure you swing on by the booth and say hi to everybody.
Will do. Thanks for having me on.
Speaking of fraud, let me share this one with you really quick. From Alpha News, 4 men have pled guilty to bilking. Bilking. That's also a word I did not expect on the show today. Not on my bingo card. For bilking Medicaid in Minnesota under a company called Brilliant Minds. So, defrauding Minnesota's Housing Stabilization Services program of approximately $2.2 million. They used artificial intelligence to fabricate records and inflate service claims, exploiting the program designed to help people with disabilities and addictions find and maintain housing. They are facing justice for their fraudulent conduct. So the scheme highlights the burgeoning trend of fraudsters using artificial intelligence. And so while the DFL in the state wants to craft these laws, and I'm not saying there's not justification for making sure that you can't go and exploit individuals by using artificial intelligence to create nude versions of those people. Nobody wants that. As I mentioned earlier, Elon Musk is filing a lawsuit because the law itself is overly broad. And in the case of Grok, AI attached to X, they already have filters that keep that type of image from being created. Here you have legitimate concerns of artificial intelligence and the way that fraudsters can go and take advantage of this. As a matter of fact, we talked with David Gartenstein-Ross yesterday, the CEO of Expert Theory and our AI analyst and expert. That was in the first hour of the show, and I encourage you to head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and make sure you give a listen to that interview, because we talked about this very issue of artificial intelligence and security. But they used AI to further a fraud scheme targeting healthcare programs in Minnesota and around the country. This is according to the DOJ's announcement. The defendants corruptly exploited vulnerable people and a vulnerable program to enrich themselves. Assistant Attorney General Colin McDonald said in a statement, taxpayer dollars designed to provide shelter and support for the homeless and needy instead went to the pockets of these men. And they now have admitted their fraudulent conduct and will face justice for their crimes. In the meantime, our work to stamp out fraud in Minnesota will continue in abandon. This is just another example of the means and the ways that the fraudsters here have been taking our money and the lengths that they're willing to go to in order to do just that. They become so brazen, unfortunately, in large part because they were allowed to get away with it for far too long, because Minnesota Attorney General Thief Ellison and Governor Dim Walz simply didn't give a rip about the issue until they had to give a rip about the issue, until the chorus around the fraud and the number grew to a point where local media couldn't ignore it, and therefore they couldn't ignore it. And now, of course, they're all out there touting how they're going to be the ones to handle this. I mean, this is in large part the reason why Governor Dim Walz backed out of the governor's race, because of all this fraud. And the expectation is that Amy Klobuchar is going to be the one to step in and go and fix it? Hardly. The woman simply cannot be trusted. And again, that just serves as a further example of the lengths in which these fraudsters will go to commit their crimes. It's the brazenness of it that really just drives me the most nuts. Individuals who just have a mindset that this is just what you can do. You just come to America and you can go and commit these acts of fraud. It's a cottage industry. It's easy. They don't even hold you accountable. More people need to be held accountable. I'm glad to see that these prosecutions are moving forward. All right, coming up. Oh, glad to see this. Poor guy. Wisconsin brewery that offered free beer when Trump dies says their alcohol permit was revoked. I will give you details on that in just a moment here on the Jon Justice Show presented by American Experiment. Right now, I want to share with you some commentary between Grace Keating and Matt Dean from Center of the American Experiment on a recent American Experiment podcast.
By the way, the class of 2025 just posted the worst academic performance on record for a graduating cohort. But wait, that's while they earned, of course, the highest graduation rate ever. Record low academic performance. They can't read at grade level. They can't do math at grade level. The schools aren't teaching them anything, but they're still graduating in record numbers.
It's crazy. They do such a disservice. How do we expect them to be successful? We're just setting them up for failure, which is really sad.
All the special interests are represented in St. Paul. But who speaks for you? Center of the American Experiment does. Our policy fellows dig into the tough issues that matter to you and offer common sense solutions on education, taxes, crime, and energy. American Experiment is the trusted, nonpartisan voice of Minnesotans like you. We are working every day to make Minnesota a better, safer, more prosperous place. We are American Experiment. Go to americanexperiment.org to learn more.
I looked it up, and the percentage of children in poverty in Minnesota is about 10%, which is lower than the national average. So how come somewhere around a third, 33%, say, of children in Minnesota are on Medicaid if they aren't poor?
Sure, my kids are grown now, but I had 3 kids that I raised, and for us, we could make over $100,000 a year, and still our kids would be on Medicaid. If you can imagine that. That's middle class. That's crazy. And, we also as a state, I think we should really measure ourselves by how few people have to rely on the government for health care, not how many. Mm-hmm. But if you ask, Governor Walz, he'll say the more people we feed, the better. The more people on government programs, the better. And that's really how he measures the state. And we really see that in the numbers in Medicaid, which have just exploded.
Think about it. Black and Hispanic students in Mississippi perform better in reading and math than Black and Hispanic students in Minnesota. And Mississippi spends thousands of dollars less per student than Minnesota. Mississippi spends less money, gets better results, and their achievement gaps are closing, while ours are getting worse. Think about it. It's time for real education reform, so Minnesota can catch up to Mississippi. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
You have to ask yourself, how in the heck can we be spending that much more money on Medicaid? And we're really looking into that because we think a lot of that money is going to people who are dead, people who live in other states, people who are on more than one program. And you are not surprised because you've seen that on so many different programs in the state of Minnesota. But Medicaid is by far the biggest enchilada when it comes to that.
That blows my mind.
Well, if you leave the state, they still get a check for you every month. And if you are covered by more than one program, or you get married and you're on your husband or wife's plan, they still get a check unless that is circumvented. So they have sort of a very vested interest in not finding you.
That was, of course, Matt Dean along with Grace Keating. If you want to hear more of that interview and commentary like that, simply head on over to americanexperiment.org and check out the American Experiment podcast hosted by Katherine Johnson and Grace Keating, out every single Tuesday. I did an interview with them this week on the show talking about the new Jon Justice Show presented by American Experiment, along with other new content exclusive to the American Experiment podcast. So be sure to go and check that out. Also at the website, if you'd like to get yourself a cool, all-new Jon Justice Show hat, all you have to do is make a donation to American Experiment. We have more merchandise that'll be available up at americanexperiment.org. But head on over to my page at the website, make a donation, and get yourself a brand new Jon Justice Show hat. The Jon Justice Show is presented by American Experiment. Let's go here. I'm talking about the state of the Democrat Party, including this lunatic, the owner, Kirk Bangstad, of this brewery in Wisconsin, who had in the past faced a backlash for a social media post offering free beer upon Trump's death. He's had his alcohol permit revoked. I'm going to give you details on this in just a moment. But there's a commonality between all of this. There's a commonality between actress Anne Hathaway and this ridiculous clip that's resurfaced of this nonsensical word salad speech she gave at a human rights event. Also, David Hogg, formerly of the DNC, on MS Now, talking about the upheaval within the Democrat Party. First, though, let's start with Riley Gaines. She probably had one of the best retorts to Anne Hathaway's ridiculous comments at this human rights event.
She lost me after the first sentence.
Exception of being a cisgender male, everything about how I was born has put me at the current center of a damaging and widely accepted myth. That myth is that gayness orbits around straightness, transgender orbits around cisgender, and that all races orbit around whiteness. And it is a myth that keeps money and power in the hands of the few instead of being invested in the lives of the free. I appreciate this community so much because it's where I learned to reject this myth. I appreciate this community because together we are not just going to question this myth, we are going to destroy it.
Even when I disagree with people politically, I try and listen and understand where they're coming from, but after watching that video, I still have absolutely no idea what Anne Hathaway was saying. Saying that all races orbit around whiteness? I got news for you. If in the year 2026 you are making assumptions based on the color of someone's skin, then you are the racist, not the other way around. I guess my question for Anne is, what exactly are you advocating for? Do you want cisgenders, really the vast majority of Americans, to orbit around transgenders? Do you want normal Americans to bow down, kiss the feet, and grovel to a very loud, fringe, oftentimes violent minority? That's a rhetorical question, because of course Anne Hathaway does. Or at least that's what Anne Hathaway and her ilk act like they want, because that's the virtuous thing to do. I think that's what all of this boils down to. I think Anne Hathaway is virtue signaling. I think she wants to be seen as kind and empathetic and compassionate, but lying and affirming mental illness is none of those things. It just makes her seem out of touch and like a total self-absorbed narcissist. Good time to remind you that Anne Hathaway is an actor, meaning she's used to following scripts. She's used to portraying herself as someone she really isn't. She's made a career and a lot of money out of being someone else for our entertainment, for public consumption. And I view this as no different. But I guess that's what happens when you live in an echo chamber.
Riley Gaines there. Fantastic comments based off of those ridiculous statements from Anne Hathaway. There's a commonality between what Anne Hathaway said and what we know now of Anthony Fauci, the diaries that were released, and the testimony that he'll have to give today at the urging of Rand Paul. Fauci likened himself as a celebrity. He inflated his own sense of self-importance. He should have been focused solely on what his expertise was, and that was dealing with pandemics, the likes of which none of us had ever had to face here in our lifetimes. But instead, the celebrity aspect and the popularity around him got to his head, and he certainly seemed much more concerned about perpetuating and keeping up with that celebrity aspect that attention that he was gaining than he was actually doing the right thing for the public. And individuals like Anne Hathaway, Riley Gaines is right. We put a sense of worth on these individuals as actors and actresses, okay? And you have some that handle it the right way, right? They understand their role in life. They understand their role as entertainers. They stay out of politics. And then you have other individuals who take this inflated sense of self-worth and then go and try to use it for activism, and they just end up coming off like a bunch of idiots. And that's exactly what happened here with Anne Hathaway. But the mentality is permeating through the Democrat Party right now to their own demise. Infighting here in Minnesota, of course, on the national level, Ken Martin dealing with the DNC being millions of dollars in debt. The guy who was one of the leads at the DNC for a little while, David Hogg, was talking with MS Now about what's been going on with the DNC to get his past inside perspective.
David, you were a part of the DNC until June of last year when committee members voted to hold new elections for your post and a fellow vice chair. And this came after you told the New York Times that you plan to spend millions to bring generational change to the party. Knowing what you know now about the committee, what you've seen from Ken Martin, are you surprised at all by these reports?
No, unfortunately, I am disappointed to see them, but I'm far from surprised.
I saw the writing on the wall early on. I remember talking about some of the issues that were going on that helped to decide the election. Let's remember here, one of the main things that Chair Ken Martin ran on releasing was an autopsy report that would bring real accountability to the DNC, and that was totally fumbled, where there was no mention of Gaza, there was no mention of inflation, there was no mention of the president's age, or any actual issues that decided the election, and they couldn't even be bothered to include a conclusion in that. Then you add on top of that it's now been 18 months, and they had to put the building up as collateral, and they're $2 million in debt. And then you juxtapose that with the progressive movement and what's going on out there. It's incredibly sad to see the DNC and the committee at this point, and it could not be more clear that he's unfit to lead. We need somebody who can actually raise money and also not throw his phone at staff.
There are so many opportunities for Republicans right now if we just don't squander it. Unfortunately, we've been squandering it. On numerous levels, right? We got to get our act together here in Minnesota. And as I've said numerous times already this morning, we need to coalesce behind whoever are those GOP nominees once we go and get past the primary. This couldn't have happened to a finer folk. A Wisconsin brewery known for its anti-Trump social media posts, including one promising a free beer promotion upon the death of President Donald Trump, has had its permit to operate in the state revoked by state officials. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported Monday that liberal activist and brewery owner Kurt Bangstad is vowing to fight tooth and nail after receiving a letter from the state's Department of Revenue revoking his Minocqua Brewing Company's permit to operate in Wisconsin, according to a July 26 newsletter sent to his supporters. The only thing that could have been better is if something like this had happened with the Penzies the Spice guy. As you can imagine, he says, I'm not taking this lying down. He wrote in a Substack post, because, of course, this idiot has a Substack. We're going to fight the state of Wisconsin tooth and nail, but once again, they'll have to pry me out of my tap rooms before I stop selling beer to thirsty progressives who come to visit us. He also asked his readers, of course, to donate to his legal defense fund, writing, as usual, fighting to keep my business alive means I have to pay lawyers, and that's never cheap. This happens this happens every time. I rack up $100,000 in legal defense bills before we even see a judge. If you can help chip into the Minocqua Company's legal defense fund, I'd really appreciate it. Does he not see the ridiculousness in his statement? This is all completely avoidable. Focus on making your beer. Quit making political stupid statements, and maybe you won't have these problems and won't have to fight these legal battles. But see, here I am making the mistake of expecting a radical Marxist leftist to actually be intelligent. So the revocation of the beer license goes into effect on the 4th of August. The business has locations in Madison and Minocqua. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Isaac doesn't know. I don't really care. It's Wisconsin. In a statement to Fox, a spokesperson for the Wisconsin Department of Revenue said the Wisconsin Division of Alcohol Beverages is dedicated to the fair and consistent enforcement of alcohol beverage regulations in Wisconsin. The division is also required to follow and implement state law, including ensuring permit holders and licensees follow all applicable laws and regulations. The division takes appropriate actions when these laws are not followed. The spokesperson added, we can confirm that the Department of Revenue has issued notice of a brewer's permit revocation for 2 Minocqua Brewing Company locations and a notice of an alcohol beverage warehouse permit revocation for 1 location. The report said the state regulators pursued revoking Bangstad's alcohol license after authorities seized canned beer from his company in June, alleging that it had been transported from Illinois without the required permits and taxes. I'm pretty sure that was the plot of Kevin Costner's Untouchables, right? No? Great movie, by the way. It's top of mind because I think it's on Paramount Plus right now. I think I saw it on the either newly added or going away soon list of movies. One of my favorites when I was growing up. The newspaper also reported that Bangstad criticized the proposed action as being excessive, arguing that the alleged tax violations didn't warrant shutting down his business. Of course, he's playing the victim in all of this. On January 22nd, the Minocqua Brewing Company appeared to suggest that it would give free beer to patrons if Trump was killed while not explicitly using his name. It was posted on Facebook, free beer all day long the day he dies. Or as Governor Dim Walz says, there might be news. I'm so glad he's going away. I hope he goes away for a long, long time. I'm not expecting it. However, I do hope that he goes away for a long, long time. Let's hear from Hans.
Hans here. I bet you that Progressive Bar, the beer that they serve is super hoppy. They like that hoppy crap. Have a great day.
Is that an issue, hoppy? Having too much hops? I don't know much about beer. I was actually telling Melinda I couldn't tell you the last time I had a beer. If it ain't Zima, that ain't working for me. I'm just telling you. Have you ever had a Zima?
I have not.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I think I was probably, when it comes to you, Catherine and Grace, I think that the Zima ended like long before any of you were of drinking age. That's gonna be my guess. Hence, if you're watching the live stream today, the blue background is in honor of Zima, because this is pretty much the color of what the bottles were. Such good stuff. Clear malt beverage. It's delicious. Completely not marketed to a guy like me, even though a guy like me really loved it. That post was updated to say, the one that got this idiot into trouble, we meant the Madison Tap Room because that's open all year. If he dies in the summer, then it's going to be the Minocqua Tap Room. In reply to comment on the post, the company also did not refer to Trump by name, but said that the post hinted at a high-profile figure when asked whether the timeline for the deal could be moved up earlier. Well, that's up to you and your ability to act like a CIA agent, the company wrote. Following the April shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where Trump was present, the company that Bangstad owns wrote on Facebook, well, we almost got free beer day. Either a brother or sister in the resistance needs to work on their marksmanship, or he faked another assassination to get a positive news cycle. We'll never know. Regardless, we stand at the ready to pour free beer the day that it happens.
I'm starting to think this guy doesn't like Trump very much.
Not very much at all. Not a very good business owner across the board.
No.
He's putting up posts that are getting him in trouble. He's not following a state law, probably because he feels like he's above the law.
When he's giving away stuff for free.
And he's giving away stuff for free, just like the postmodern.
Yeah.
There seems to be like a theme going on here, Isaac, that you're picking up on.
There does, yeah.
I feel like you feel like you're getting educated.
I think so.
Yeah, a lot of leering going on the Jon Justice Show. That's good. That's why I'm here. Bangstad, the owner of the brewery, is also the founder of the Minocqua Brewing Company Super PAC, which aims to remove Republican federal and state elected officials who perpetuated the election lies that caused the insurrection of January 6th. My gosh. Listen, January 6th is going to live in the hearts and minds of these radical progressives forever. They have blown the cannon around that day. The headcanon that they all carry is truly astonishing. They simply cannot relent of their ridiculous view of that day. I've said from the get-go, I would be more than happy to have a top-to-bottom accounting of everything that happened on January 6th. That would be a documentary that I would watch as long as it covered every single angle of what was involved that day. But, of course, we'll never get that. He also said those who were downplaying the seriousness of COVID-19 that caused so many unnecessary deaths in our country, according to the brewery's website. Well, I'm sure that he is very pleased about the Fauci testimony today, since I would put Anthony Fauci firmly in that category of exacerbating what was already an incredibly deadly pandemic. If you want to leave us a blast, you can do so. 612-584-4565. 612-584-4565. If you want to leave a comment, we call them blasts here on our blaster line on the Jon Justice Show, presented by American Experiment. You can also email me, john.justice@americanexperiment.org. john.justice@americanexperiment.org.
Hey, John, welcome back. It's good to have you on in the mornings again. The comment about the IPAs, I love IPAs. I just learned the other day, though, that IPAs contain estrogen, which would make perfect sense as to why perhaps the Democrats like it so much as well.
You do learn something new every day. Can you buy, like, estrogen supplements? I don't know. I wonder how much estrogen was in Zima. Do not leave me an email or a blast answering that question. It's rhetorical. I only did it for the jokes. I'm just saying. Isaac, it wasn't considered to be the manliest of drinks. I just want to say that up front.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, there was a clear phase that took place in the 1990s. So you had Zima was a part of the clear phase because it was a clear malt beverage. You had Pepsi going the crystal clear route, where it was clear Pepsi.
Yeah,
that was really convenient when I was much younger and into tomfoolery. When you would want to go to, say, a concert. And you would like to bring with you an alcoholic beverage, but of course you can't carry in an alcoholic beverage. So you could. Isaac, I'm not saying that I did.
Got it. Just in theory.
I'm not saying that I did. But you could take...
Someone could have.
You could have.
Right.
You could take water bottles or clear Pepsi bottles and then fill them with Zima and then go to your event. And I'm certainly not saying that there was... an EMF concert that I went to at the Universal Amphitheater in Southern California, where I may have indulged entirely too much and might have gotten even a little bit sick before the show starts. I'm not saying that happened at all.
Man, that's a good thing it didn't happen.
No, those were during what I referred to as the dark years. That's about as dark as it got, of the dark years of Jon Justice in the past.
That's not too bad.
No, not too bad.
Hey, John, I'm here. I could be wrong, but I think it was the Canadian border. They were transporting whiskey across the Canadian border. Have a good day.
Yeah, no, Hans, that was the plot of Untouchables. I was making a joke. Just for clarity there. But thank you for the blast. 612-584-4565. All right, this is a little bit distressing, and I had to do some digging as to what actually happened. Minnesota IT Services reports that it coordinated a cyber attack targeting technology at more than 30 community water systems between Sunday the 26th and Monday the 27th. Speaking of beverages, the state has activated its cybersecurity incident response capabilities to respond to the attacks. So on Monday and Tuesday, Fox 9 reported, and this was in multiple news outlets, on notices from 4 cities that had disclosed the attacks: Plymouth, South St. Paul, Maple Plain, and Brom. All 4 cities said the impacts of the attacks were limited or mitigated, and residents could continue normal water use. The Minnesota Department of Health is not aware of any municipality asking residents to alter their drinking water use as a result of the attacks. Now, state officials say they are working with federal private security partners to investigate the attacks, support the affected communities, and strengthen the security of Minnesota's critical infrastructure. So a portion of their statement towards the end, it says, our response worked as intended, enabling agencies at every level of government to rapidly coordinate, contain the incident, and help prevent more serious impacts to critical services. Now, I had to go and consult our AI overlords over this, but because none of the stories, and it's so weird when they do this, I don't understand why. But none of the stories laid out exactly what had actually happened. Like, we know there was a cyber attack. Immediately I go, why are we having our water services cyber attacked unless they're looking to harm residents? There appears to be no damage to our water supplies. So I did a bit of a search with our AI overlords, and what I found out was this cyber attack, it shut down the computerized operating controls, disrupted the remote communications, and forced the cities to switch to manual workloads. So it essentially stripped away an abundance of the technology that our water services uses, and they had to go back to sort of more archaic means of dealing with the daily operations of providing water in these various communities: South St. Paul, Maple Plain, Brom, and Plymouth. This is always strange to me when they don't ever give us what did they do? And even to this point, I wonder, okay, well, what exactly were they attempting to do? Unless they were just simply doing a proof of concept that they could go and attack our critical water infrastructure. So I'm curious to see if there will be any sort of further commentary on any of this. I'm not trying to, bring about cause of concern, but when you've got cyber attacks and they're, and they are impacting our vulnerable water system, then there's a level of concern there. Let's go back to the blaster line this morning.
Morning, John. Phil from Jordan. A hearty welcome back to you and your stories about Monty. Just quick about the bathhouse issue. It won't matter how many people come out against it. Just like how many people know how bad marijuana is. We still got that legalized, when in fact it should only be medicinal. And we can go to even gambling, how they want to expand that. It's all for tax base. They don't really care what happens to the people as long as government gets more money. Bad state of affairs. Thank you for keeping us clued in on everything going on in Minnesota. Have a good day.
And thank you, Phil from Jordan. I really appreciate the blast this morning, 612-584-4565. Keep those coming in. And remember, you can listen to the show if you missed any portion of it. You can listen and watch, essentially, the show after the show is over. On our YouTube feeds, we're also on Rumble. The videos will be posted there as well, and via the podcast. If you've downloaded the MixLR app to listen to the show every single day, the podcast will be posted directly inside the app. They're also available on all of your podcasting platforms. You just have to go looking for it. All right, let's wrap up here. I've been talking about this a little bit throughout the morning. We covered this briefly on the Dry Run Freedom Friday show with Grace and Catherine. We will have Grace, Catherine, Max, and AK all in studio with us on Friday. So a full house Freedom Friday. Isaac is going to be very, very busy on Friday morning because he will be here as well. A lot of requests to get you on camera too. Why haven't we done that yet?
I don't know.
Okay. You just don't have an answer for that yet.
Nope.
Okay.
No answer.
We'll work on it. And when I say everybody, I mean my wife because she's your biggest fan.
There were a couple comments.
Yeah.
I fear they don't know what they're asking for.
So 5 new pieces of legislation you need to know before the start of the month. So again, we went through a few of these on Friday, but I want to run through these just quickly. So the ban on crypto at ATMs, virtual currency kiosks, crypto ATMs have been a source of concern for law enforcement agencies. They are now being banned. Fighting fraud, we talked about this extensively. According to the House of Representatives, a 2005 law lets state agencies withhold payments to a participant for up to 60 days if there is sufficient evidence the participant has committed fraud to get paid. Come August 1st, the new law removes the 60-day cap and lowers the evidence in credible allegations of fraud verified in the state agencies. And so this was one of the one of the few moments of bipartisanship to come out of the legislature this year in the passing of this. We also had the kratom age change. We talked about this at length on Friday's show, and I encourage you to go and check out the podcasts as well. Also on the list, this one we didn't cover. 2 new pieces of legislation directly inspired by the attack on lawmakers. The first one increases the penalties for impersonating a police officer from a misdemeanor to a felony. The penalty increases if the person is trying to get into a public building or government facility that is not open to the public or tries to control a person's actions. The next law centers around chemical irritants deployed by police inside of buildings. Following the assassination of his parents last June, Colin Hortman couldn't complete the cleanup of their home for months because it was unclear what chemicals were deployed during the police response and how they needed to be cleaned up. Now, this new law requires law enforcement to share information about what products were used during a police response when asked. You know, I'm curious, and the story doesn't get into it here from Care 11, but I'm curious the reasons why that information was held private in the first place. I would guess that there was probably a reason why law enforcement was not making known what those chemical irritants were. And then also on the list of the new laws was the one that I mentioned earlier, and that was the artificial intelligence bringing about a host of new and frightening concerns, as written in the article. When it comes to digital images, the nudification technology can be used to change a non-explicit photo of someone into a non-consensual, sexually explicit image using AI. That technology is now banned throughout the state. However, Elon Musk's XAI has filed a lawsuit challenging the law, arguing that it is overly broad and infringes on protected speech. The law, which is set to take effect on August 1st, bans the use of AI to create non-consensual sexually explicit images and allows the victims to take legal action. The XAI claims that the law's definition of intimate part is too broad and could prohibit ordinary depictions of people. As a matter of fact, they mentioned in the article that you could essentially have individuals in bathing suits that are banned from this. The fate of the legislation is now uncertain, given this new challenge registered in the U.S. District Court of Minnesota yesterday, which sues Attorney General Thief Ellison over the new Minnesota statute. Dim Walls, in response to it, said, "See you in court, creep." Come on. Listen, I know that Governor Dim Walls doesn't care about how he goes and looks. But again, an individual who has passed some of the most draconian abortion laws in the state, supports exploiting children, allowing access to explicit sexual material for children, allowing children to have their bodies mutilated by healthcare officials, and his response to this is calling Elon Musk a creep? Yeah, okay. You do you, Governor Dim Walls. But Elon makes a great point in all of this. It is overly broad, and the private sector is taking care of this. And wherein you would hope there would at least be some sort of discussion or pushback on this, the bill's authors, all they do is present the arguments of why it's bad. Nobody is disagreeing that it's bad, that you shouldn't have technology to allow the notification of individuals. The point is the private sector and the creators of these apps and these AI large language models are already taking care of the problem on their end. Therefore, all this law is going to do is take away other potential advancements in AI. And at the end of the day, it may be that this law is worthy. But unfortunately, when you look at the commentary coming from the individuals that passed it, our failed leadership in Thief Ellison and Dim Walls, and neither of them have any interest in whatsoever addressing the concerns of individuals who think that this is stifling AI innovation and people will still be safe. And instead, they just want to rush to the fact that they think it's completely worthwhile because they passed it. But that's what you get from DFL and leftist leadership here in the state of Minnesota. That wraps up the show for today. Thank you to everybody who joined us this morning. Continue to leave your blasts on the blaster line, 612-584-4565. You can leave those 24/7. If you missed any portion of the show, check out the podcast. Available on all podcast platforms, including on the MixLR app, where you listen to this show on a daily basis. You can also listen at AmericanExperiment.org. And you can watch back the video on both Facebook and YouTube and Rumble. American Experiment, and also Facebook and YouTube on American Experiment's pages, and also my personal pages as well. We're back at it tomorrow starting at 6 a.m. with a replay of today's show in the hour leading up to 6 a.m. for those of you early risers that may have missed some of today's show. Also in studio tomorrow, Adam Schwarzy, a Senate candidate, will be joining us in studio tomorrow morning. Looking forward to that. So as we close out the show, I played the alternate version of Zima Fizz yesterday. A lot of people agreed with me that they liked the original version, and they were glad that I went with version 1.0 and not version 2.0. And while we are typically going to reserve Zima Fizz for the intro to Freedom Fridays, in honor of those of you that voiced your opinion over the secondary version of the song, let's close out with a little Zima Fizz. God bless, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow morning. Have a great one. Bye.
Static waves at dawn, a voice that lingers when night is gone. Twin cities hum with stories spun. Jon Justice rides the rising sun. Zima Fizz in a plastic cup. Star Wars dreams keep lifting him up. Costco aisles is sacred ground where neon shadows spin around. of hope.